Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and thanks for stopping by. Our dedicated team will guide you through with the latest updates and theories at Starbase, Texas. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon for future streams.
Hello, everybody. My name is Zach Golden, and welcome to another Starbase Weekly live stream. Got an awesome show for you guys this week. We are I guess about 2 days away from the next launch. Actually, I guess it's 3 now since it has officially been moved to Tuesday. Either way, it is still exciting. We have the second catch attempt coming up. I guess we probably even, I'm not going to call it attempts anymore because I've always been of the mind that we probably will never see a failed booster catch. So I'm just going to say we have our second booster catch, which will be really exciting. Also have some new expectations for the ship this time with a second orbit burn, so that's going to be cool to watch. But yeah, lots to cover this week. So we have several guests joining us today. First of all, we have Todd with us. So Todd, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Zach, thanks for having me. It's always fun. The pictures turned out just great today. Weather really cooperated. And yeah, like you said, we've got an exciting week ahead of us. So this should be a fun one. Let's get into it when we're ready.
Awesome. And also joining us today, I believe, is BJ.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. Like everyone said, exciting flight again this week and some great images to look at in advance of it.
Yeah, agreed. And our third guest of today is one that was actually original to our live stream, so many of you may know him already. So with that said, welcome back, Astro Joe. Or sorry, wow, Grandpa Joe. Thanks for joining us.
It's Grandpa Joe. Actually a Joe, but not actually a grandpa. Thanks for having me back, guys.
Yeah, so used to saying Astro Joe. So, but on that note, we do have Astro Joe who will be handling questions and donations for us. So thanks for being here, Astro Joe.
Indeed. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, Starbase friends. Yeah, going to be a little bit confusing with a couple of Joes on the show, but glad to have you back, Grandpa Joe. Let's enjoy the show.
Hey, I'll be glad to be confused with you any day. Y'all just call me Grandpa and I'll know who you mean.
There you go.
Are you heading down there for this launch, Grandpa Joe?
Oh, no, sir. This was one I'm going to miss, unfortunately. It's been the first one in a while. I think I caught most of the rest of them.
Yeah. I was originally thinking I may go down for this one, but I also had a good feeling that this would get pushed from the original date of Monday, and
Yeah.
I have to go back to work on Wednesday, so that was not going to be an option for me to go down there Tuesday.
Made the right choice. Yeah, I think this might be the first time the FAA was ready and SpaceX was the one trying to catch up.
Yeah, that is a very good point. And on that note, we have had some change in operations a little bit. Right now, we're waiting for a tanking test tomorrow, I believe. So there is a road closure from, I want to say 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. tomorrow.
Yes, sir. That's accurate.
Yeah, so that should be just a short tanking test. It won't be like a full wet dress rehearsal. I think the days of doing those are temporarily behind us. We'll probably see another wet dress rehearsal, potentially with the V2, the first V2 ship, and definitely the first time they launch from Pad B. But other than that, I think it's not really necessary, and they've probably come to the same conclusion, obviously, that not really necessary to do a full wet dress rehearsal unless something major has changed. So, with that said, there is a full stack on the pad right now. They have started to, or actually completed installation of the FTS on Booster 13 last night. So actually had some cool shots from Starship Gazer, who was out there last night waiting for that. So this is a little bit different procedural wise, because usually they destack the ship when they're doing FTS. I don't think that's like a requirement for installing it on the booster. However, usually they're doing both the ship and booster at the same time. But I think potentially something different about this launch is, as Grandpa Joe mentioned, they already have a launch license for this launch. So in the past, almost every launch before this, they've pretty much had a full stack on the pad waiting to get that launch license, and then destack after that to install FTS. So I don't know if that's actually part of their procedure, that they need a launch license to install FTS. I'm not really sure if that's the case or not. However, it could be one thing that has changed the situation a little bit. So, we don't really know whether or not Ship 31 already has its FTS installed, but I have a feeling that's probably not the case. It did sit out near the tower for several days before it was stacked. So I think it got out there on Tuesday this week and sat out there for quite a while, and nobody really saw any work being done near that FTS box area. So if it is installed, it does kind of suggest that it may have happened inside of the high bay, which would be interesting to say the least. Yeah, I mean, the thing about that is, more often than not, or I think it's kind of a rule, that if they do that, then once they're transporting it, whatever the vehicle of transportation is, has to have placards on it that signify that there are explosives on board. And as far as we know, and everybody that's looked for it, there was no indication that the FTS had been pre-installed. So I think there's a chance that we will probably still see a destack of Ship 31 after this tanking test, which gives them Monday to get that installed and restacked for the launch on Tuesday. So that's going to be really exciting. I guess interested to see in the chat if there's any people in the chat who are actually planning on going down there for the launch. It's a really awesome experience if you haven't already. So I definitely recommend seeing one in person. Grandpa Joe, what would you say is the biggest difference for you watching in person versus, on the live streams?
Oh, it's such a visceral experience being there in person. The sound and the sound waves and repercussions from the sonic boom and just the rockets going off. It's so much louder than anything you could ever experience in TV. And you're there watching history like live, and you get to say, I saw that right from the source. But on the flip side, when you're at home, you get so many more angles. You can see so many more details. In a lot of ways, you're so much closer up to the action. So both have their good times. I'd highly recommend everybody go down at least once. But for me, I've done it a lot of times, so I really enjoy going down there, and I love the people too.
Yeah. I'm a little torn on it most times when I actually go down there because, like you said, obviously it's a lot more fun to be down there in person, and especially, to experience the sounds and all of that stuff. But then again, sometimes being able to watch from home and like quickly look at multiple different angles, or actually be active on social media or something like that, which is something I personally care about. It's a little bit more ideal to be at home. But I am kind of sad because I was hoping to get another chance to film this one, but there will be a lot more in the near future. On that note, we have heard some updates from Gwen Shotwell this week, who mentioned, I think the question that she was asked was, I didn't hear the full question, but I'm pretty sure they probably asked something related to how much money Starlink is generating for them. And she kind of skipped around that question a little bit, but what she did say was kind of outlining their expectations for the next 4 years, in which she mentioned that they're expecting that within the next 4 years, they will launch 400 times with Starship. And that's pretty incredible. I think a lot of people, for some reason, have difficulty believing that, but it's really not that hard for them to achieve. With 2 launch pads, I think they could easily exceed 100 launches a year. But I think the one thing that a lot of people don't consider when they listen to that number that she put out is that these are only 2 launch pads out of potentially up to 6, if not more, that they'll have by the end of 2029. So the launch cadence is not going to be completely just out of Starbase. It'll also include KSC eventually, which will probably start to take off as soon as, from what we are understanding, once SpaceX achieves a launch rate of once, I can't remember if it was once a week or once every other week, they will then have clearance or start to, I'm not sure what the exact wording was, but I'm pretty sure what they mentioned was that they will be able to kind of resume operations with Starship at KSC once they've achieved that launch rate here at Starbase. So
the other thing there you have to really consider is human spaceflight in America is almost limited to that same launch pad. And if Starship were to blow it up, we'd have not a lot of ways of getting to space. So it's real careful. So they either have to move that operation for the Falcon with the crew missions, or they have to really prove how safe Starship is, which is what I think their ultimate goal is.
Well, on that note, they do actually have the second crew launch tower at LC 40, right?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, so that's one hurdle that they have cleared, as far as having a second pad to launch crew missions from, because that is critical in the event that something were to happen with the damage to pad 39A as a result of something that occurs on the Starship launch tower on that same launch complex. So I don't know. I think by then, by the time they're operational in KSC, they probably won't really be worried about failed landing attempts, or even failed launch attempts, I guess. I think they'll have so many launches under their belt at that point that it'll be pretty much something that they wouldn't even really consider as a possibility. I don't think we've had a pad explosion of Falcon 9 since, Amos 6? Is that what it was?
Yeah, back in 2016, I want to say. And by the way, the Starship and the Raptor has been phenomenal. It's been way more reliant than I ever expected it to be, especially with these prototype launches. They lost one engine a couple of launches ago, and then maybe 6 on the first one when something blew up. And they've just gotten, and it's not the engine. I think it's the fire suppression system that really got them those times. I mean, we may never know, but yeah, it's been very much more reliable than expected.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'm sure we'll touch on this again throughout the episode. Obviously, when we get to the launch site, we'll probably start discussing things related to Flight 6 again. But I did want to come back to this image that I had up at the start of the show, because this is actually a really cool angle that I don't think we've shown before. This pretty much shows the entire Starship operation at in Brownsville in one shot right here, which is really cool. So you can see, of course, the Massey's test site down here on the bottom right, with the Rio Grande River heading over to the Gulf of Mexico. And then you can see the Ad Astra building right here, which is really cool. Actually, we haven't gotten a good overhead shot of this in a while. I don't think, since they've done the 3D printed buildings that they've added down here. So that may actually be cool to show on a future episode. But as far as we know, this is where the mission control takes place down here, which is a pretty good distance away from the actual launch site, as far as, being protected from potential explosions on the pad or something like that. But beyond that, we also have the little storage slot that used to kind of be pretty much at the Sanchez site, or other locations like near the building that they store all the Starlink satellites in. They used to store a lot of that stuff there as well too. But everything's kind of been consolidated down to this one little storage site. And then up here we have the future grocery store. I believe, was there some other things that they were going to build here as well?
Yeah, there's going to be some restaurants and stuff, kind of a retail center in general.
Yeah. And then over here, we have the row of the viewing areas that are pretty much about as close as you can get to the actual launch without, I would say, I feel like when you're watching from Mexico, it's actually slightly closer. But these are some really cool viewing areas. Right here is the Raptor Roost viewing area. There's a few SpaceX properties down here. This is the Rocket Ranch viewing area, and they also are partnered with both Lab Padre and NASA Spaceflight. So they have a cool little booth over here on top of their viewing platform for broadcasting and whatnot. And then those of you who have been in the show and tells with us, you probably know of Dave Avery. He does a lot of the audio work down here for, basically streaming the SpaceX live stream, and also, kind of announcing to everybody what's happening. Because, without being able to see the countdown and all that stuff, it's really helpful to have somebody who actually is essentially, a commentator. So, really cool having Dave down there. And then Maria Pointer has her property down here as well. I think it's this one.
Yeah.
For her viewing area. And I'm missing the name right now of what Starship Station, I believe.
Station.
Yeah. So then there's some down here in the end, but
don't forget about the Cards Against Humanity Wildlife Preservation lot right there.
Yeah. Is that this one?
No, I think it's one of those off to the right there, maybe next to Maria's. But yeah, don't dump stuff there.
Yeah. If you guys ever go down there, all of these are open. The three viewing areas are open, for travelers to, they all have their own, I don't know what the cost of each one is. But you're able to pretty much book, your trip to any of these three locations if you want to watch from one of those. Beyond that, most people end up watching from South Padre Island, at Isla Blanca Park, and then I believe there's another viewing area on Port Isabel. I'm not sure what that one's called. Tons of great places to watch from if you're down there. What was that?
I think the Port Isabel is called like Manhattan or something.
You know, Zach, it's also even if you don't go down there for a launch, it's still cool to go check out that area. When me and my daughter went, I believe it was Grandpa Joe sent us that way to go to Raptor Roost, and they were unbelievably insightful. Showed us all kinds of things that we wouldn't have expected to look at. Even if you're not there for launch, it's great to go visit that area.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really excited for this. It's you know, again, sad I'm not going to be there for this one, but also kind of glad to be able to watch it from home. So it's going to be really awesome. I think one of the limiting factors for launch on Monday, which is kind of potentially why they pushed it, partially could be, like I mentioned, needing to destack for installing the FTS on the ship, which last time took about 69 hours total. I went back and looked at the archive of videos that I have to kind of figure out when the starting and end point of all of the different events. So destacking, start of FTS install when they actually finished, and when the ship was fully stacked again, took about 69 hours. I think that was a little bit delayed, mostly because of it took them quite a while to get the FTS installed on the booster, almost like 18 hours, I want to say. And this time around, they got that done in 6 hours. So I think, if they still do have FTS install to perform on the ship, the destack or preparing for destack, which is a whole nother process, the actual destack, installing FTS, preparing for restack, and then actually stacking it again could probably be done in about a 24-hour period. So not only that, but there is expected to be like high winds on Monday. So that could be another reason why they are pushing to Tuesday. But yeah, it's going to be exciting one way or another. So, I'm glad we're able to do this show beforehand, because initially I was kind of thinking we weren't going to have a flyover this week. Usually Mauricio likes to do flyovers the day after the launch or the day of the launch. So I think we will actually have another flyover probably on Tuesday, if I had to guess. I haven't really confirmed that, but yeah, exciting times. With that, I guess. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it'll probably be Wednesday or Thursday. We were discussing last night because of the 4:00 launch time. The flyover wouldn't be able to happen until really, really close to sunset, and the lighting conditions were pretty challenging yesterday. So I think the idea is to maybe delay that flyover to not be same day to have better lighting conditions.
Yeah, true. And that is a good point to also mention for this flyover, was about that around that time, about 4:00. So you notice some different shadows. Usually Mauricio's either flying in the morning or the afternoon, because he does have a full-time job. So working around that is a little difficult sometimes, which, by the way, makes it really appreciative for everybody who donates towards the show, because it's a lot of work for him to drive. I think it's like a 2-hour round trip for him to either get to Starbase or the airport. So yeah, after a full day of work and then coming up to take these amazing flyover images, it's quite a bit of work. So shout out to everybody who donates during the show. And actually, on that note, there have been a ton of gifted memberships, which I'll let Astro Joe mention later. But if you are one of those recipients of the gifted memberships and you have not had the chance to go through these flyover images yourself before, then with that gifted membership, you will have access to not only this flyover, but every past flyover. So you can download the images yourself and go through them before the show if you would like to search through it and come to the show with questions. That's one of the big reasons why we do the live streams, is so that people can get the chance to ask those kind of questions. So make sure you check that out if you were gifted a membership today. And like I said, we'll touch on those again later. For now, I think we'll go ahead and move over to the Massey site. That was one of the longest intros I think I've ever done, so sorry about that. But yeah, moving over to the Massey site. A little dark over here this week, but some great images either way. We have the ship static fire stand, which is, they've been doing some work on this, not necessarily on the stand itself, but they got a new work platform that they've been messing around with over the last few weeks. And this is actually a really cool image, seeing it from this angle, because you can actually see the what did you call these, BJ?
Chain hoists.
Yeah. The chain hoists. But these are the collection, or the chain, like
chain buckets.
Yeah, the chain buckets. I'm like, what's the word for this?
Yeah, the middle one there, you can actually see real clear that you can see the chain bucket down in the bottom. The one to the left, the middle of the three we see, and then you can actually see the orange chain hoist there just below the catwalk.
Nice. Yeah. So once this thing is underneath here, I believe there's are there 8 of these?
6 on this one.
So 2 on this side, 2 on that side, and then 1 on either side over here.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So 6 chain hoists to lift this up. I think that gives them so on the launch mount, they had, I believe, 6 of them as well. And what we calculated, I guess, based on the load limit for these hoists was that they were only able to lift like 2 or 3 Raptors at a time with that stand, which it's been a long time since they've removed a Raptor while in the launch mount. But I think that they probably have the same capabilities with this one, probably 1 to 2 Raptors at a time. But again, like I said, it's pretty rare these days that they actually end up swapping out Raptors on the test stands. It seems like the actual testing procedures have gone a lot better than they have in the past, and the Raptors end up performing as expected each time. So yeah, still either way, this is a cool platform to allow them to get up underneath it without having to use these JLG lifts. But yeah, again, this is something that I do kind of pay a lot of attention to, just because I think this everything about the static fire stand, it influences what we are going to see on the actual orbital launch mount for Pad B. So I think every component that we see here in some way or form will be duplicated on that orbital launch pad. So, this is kind of, in my opinion, the prototype for that. So cool to see the progress with how they've made this really awesome test stand. In comparison to the old suborbital test stands, this is really awesome. So.
Hey, Zach, I have a more general question for you about the static fires. Like with the Falcon 9, do they still static fire every ship every time, or have they moved to not doing that? And do you think they'll ever not need to static fire every ship and every booster before every flight for the Starship program?
Yeah, so with Falcon 9, they perform static fires on every new booster. So I guess that would kind of be the same for this, because they usually only perform 1 static fire test. They're not reflying them yet, so we haven't seen what that will look like. I imagine maybe after at least the first reflight, they'll probably do another static fire test. But for Falcon 9, once it's been flight proven, they, as far as I know, don't do any more static fire tests. With Falcon Heavy, they do them every time. So, yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Oh, yeah. So eventually, this will be for commissioning, not for, and maybe for maintenance, but not for every single flight, because that'd be a lot of static fires.
Yeah, agreed. There's going to be a lot either way. With the rate of production, there'll be tons of static fires happening here. Massey's has actually it feels like it's been relatively quiet lately. There is obviously the occasional static fire test and cryo test, but I'm really excited for things to ramp up, because I feel like we'll eventually always have a booster and a ship, if not 2 ships at the pad at the same time. That's kind of what I'm looking forward to, is having, full testing operations ongoing. Once you're doing a cryo test on the ship, while the ship ahead of it has already had its engines installed and performing a static fire test, and kind of rotating them through like that. So yeah, it's going to be pretty awesome to see the pace pick up over here.
Yeah, I think the production rate we've been seeing with like the nose cone production, was seeing 3 more nose cones done. I think that ship assembly and stacking is going to get to a point where we're going to start seeing a fairly regular interval of cryo tests and static fires as they just pick up that construction.
Yeah, agreed. And that reminds me, I kind of do want to pull up a little image here. I think was posted by Starbase Surfer, or C. Nunez. Had a really cool shot of inside of that Star Factory. Let's see here. He posts quite a few images every day, so a little difficult to scroll through this and find what I'm looking for, but there it is. Yeah, so this is, if you drive past Starbase, this is one of the cool sites that you will now see. So the actual Star Factory itself is extremely large and long. So the amount of workstations there are for ships is going to dramatically increase. But as of right now, they at least have three workstations for nose cones. So you can see the progression here. Let's see if I need to open this up in another. Yeah, you can see the progression here. And I believe there's probably another workstation to the right of this as well too. But that is, oh, sorry. And I was just thinking the crazy thing about this actually is that these are, with how tall these look, these are just the actual nose cone section without the payload bay attached. So that's one thing that we haven't even seen them start to do yet is stack the nose cones onto the payload sections inside of the Star Factory. So that's one thing that we're expecting them to begin doing soon, but I think that will be the workstation that's to the left of this. So once they have all the tiles installed, the next step would be to stack the nose cone onto the payload section. So I've been looking for that when I went down there last time to see what their progress was on getting that done. But as of right now, they're still performing that part of the operation inside of the high bay. So soon enough, I think we'll see them start to roll out full nose cones with payload sections attached.
One thing that picture doesn't show, Zach,
Sure.
is that when you're looking at that looks like, really big section, but that area when you're actually there is not that big in comparison to the rest of the factory. So they've got so much more room in there than just that picture. So yeah, I expect to see them stacking much more onto the payload section soon too.
Yeah, agreed. Actually, we can kind of show this potentially, I think. I'm not sure if I have an angle that looks at it from that side or not right now. But I'll try and pull it up when we get to the build site area or the Star Factory. But just so you guys can get an idea of how long this section of the building is, because like Todd mentioned, it's actually super short. But yeah, moving back to, actually accidentally closed out of the Massey's. Moving back to Massey's, they have also started to make even more progress on the test stand over here. So they're currently reconfiguring it for whatever comes next. So something is probably going to come out of the Star Factory soon. And I think will be most likely either an aft section for a booster that they're preparing for right here. So it may be their first test that they're going to be doing for the boosters that will be using Raptor 3. So with the upgraded thrust capabilities of Raptor 3, they're going to, I think, need to recertify the booster aft section. And that was probably going to happen either way because there's a lot of changes to it. So, with adding more powerful engines, though, you need to make sure that the structure can actually handle it. So it looks like that's what they're preparing for. And this looks a lot different than it did last week. So there's a few things that have notably changed. And one of those being that they have new mounts on here for some hydraulic pistons. But this is very odd. And I'm not sure what was said about this in show and tell yesterday. But it's a bit confusing because with the pistons going on top of these, I don't know what the actual test article is going to be resting on top of.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I talked about last night is I think what it's turning into is, as opposed to the test article sitting on the ring like it did on the old Can Crusher base, I think we're going to see actually a true 33 RAM mount where it actually sits on every Raptor mount of the test article. Because I think that outer ring is going to have 20, and then we've seen how that other ring that is just off to the side has 8 of the 10 middle ring, with the rest of it there on that structure to the left. So I think it's going to sit completely on all Raptor mounts and not actually on the barrel itself.
That would be really interesting, and I think a reason that doing that would be of value is because in flight, you don't have something holding down the rim of the booster. So if you can just only have contact points where it actually makes sense to, which is on those engine mounts, and the top hat that goes up there, that probably gives them more accurate data.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where, like, in conjunction with not just holding it by the 33 actual mounts, is I know Jake had talked last night about how the outer ring of 10 at one point there were rams under there. I guess I don't remember that, just in my history of following things, thinking that if you're only holding the ring, you're holding it very stably across the whole thing. You're not giving it dynamics at the 20 locations, where now this new one would give you that dynamic force at the 20 locations where the Raptors are, instead of being locked down to a solid ring.
Yeah. I think the other pistons previously were mounted on the outside right here. And so those were for basically pulling down on the structure. They had rods going in between here and the cap. So this is definitely quite a different setup. Over here, we also have a small ring section over here, which appears to be for the ring of 10 engines. So I believe this is still under construction right here. Let me see if I have a better angle of this.
Yeah, we didn't have a great angle on it. In that picture, you could kind of see at what would be 8 o'clock and 2 o'clock. I don't think that's a solid ring right now. I think it's two, I guess it would be like 300-degree segments of a ring. That'll kind of be two bookends to that structure that has the center 3, to kind of give it, because we can only see the 8 mounts on this as opposed to 10.
Yeah, it looks like there are only 8 on here currently. However, I don't know how these are actually mounting onto here. So I think with the extra holes that are here, that they're preparing to install more of these in those locations. So if they do, that will take it up to 10. Actually, because there's 6, not 8 currently, right? So
what is this part for?
So I think this will go in the middle of here. So you have this structure in the middle right here, which will probably be for the 3 center engines. And then between that and the outer ring, you'll have the middle section. So I believe that will go on top of here.
This will be for stress testing, like the booster test tank or the ship test tanks in the future.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's for a booster test that's coming up. So with this stand that's in the middle right here, it has Nelson studs on the outside of it. So we're expecting them to pour concrete here soon, between the actual structure in the middle and the outer ring. And then I believe this will probably end up resting on top of that concrete that they end up pouring in there.
Sweet. Can't argue with all their testing. It has proven well so far, man. This thing's flying.
Yeah, and Grandpa Joe, every level of that rings, they have different mounting points for different rams, so they can give the different structural tests, whether it's twisting, turning, buckling, one side more than the other. So they have a lot of different ways to set this up to do the different testing that they need to do.
It reminds me of Flight 1 whenever they were going end over end, and even the separation ring wouldn't come off, and they tried to blow it up, and it was indestructible. Definitely, they've overbuilt it for now. So I'm interested to see if a thinner model later on could be lighter and still just as strong enough.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, how this progresses, because I'm assuming that they'll do a lot of different tests with this over the coming months, or actually probably over all of the year next year. So lots to look forward to with that. Moving on, we also have to check in on Booster 11's aft section. So they've progressed on on scrapping the aft dome right here. They really have kind of torn most of it apart. And the only large piece truly remaining right here is this, I guess I want to call it almost a quarter section, but more like a third of the aft skirt for the outer 20 engines. So still haven't finished with that. I think they're probably taking components off of the inner wall still. But yeah, in a few weeks, this won't be here anymore.
Yeah, and the funny part is the hot stage ring and pieces up there to the top of the thrust puck as well. Yeah,
Wait,
all the
where?
to the just above the aft section, to the left there, above the thrust puck for the center.
Oh, are you talking about here?
No, to the left, all the way there. All those little pieces are the hot stage ring cut into chunks.
Yeah, I was actually wondering what happened to it. So that makes sense. Yeah, they did not waste any time cutting that apart. It is cool to see it like this, though, because you can see all the supports that they have on the inside of that hot stage ring. Cool. Anything else at Massey's that we should cover? Okay. Well, in that case,
Think we got it.
Astro Joe, would you like to give us some of the questions from the audience, and also we'll touch on all the donations so far?
Absolutely would. Thank you very much. I wanted to thank 55 Chevy Guy, Steve, Callistia Lee, Jake Winlow, Ribby, not Tom B, Chris L, Ribby again, for all each gifting 5 memberships. Every single one of them gifted 5. That is amazing support. Thank you all. I want to thank Phil for becoming a member, as well as a 199-pound super chat. Says, love this place. Keep up the good work. A $4.99 super chat from Mike K. Starship should do another half flip right before the touchdown, nose diving first to the ocean like a submarine. All right. I want to thank Rocket Prophet. Well, Rocket Prophet is asking a question: will Pad B's launch mount have similar legs?
No. We will. I guess we'll touch on that here in a few minutes once we get over to the Sanchez site. But no, it should be very similar to what we're seeing here. And again, folks are going to disagree with me on this. But right with the static fire test stand, you have these pedestals that are basically bolted into the ground, and these are actually resting on top of the diaphragm wall. So the wall that goes around the trench, you can see the outline of it here. It's a very thick wall that it actually doesn't go past here, but it's basically a U-shaped wall that goes around the trench. And so these, it's kind of the equivalent of what's at the launch site right now, which is CFA pilings. So instead of having those pilings, this is an actual diaphragm wall, which is about the same. It's extremely deep. So these are resting on top of some pretty sturdy supports, and basically bolted to the ground. I think these are actually welded to the ground because there are embed plates that are in these corners. So they welded these pedestals down onto those embed plates. And so basically all the ship has to do is drive up onto this platform and pull up and then lower itself down until this is resting on top of those pedestals. And then they bolt it down and the SPMTs drive away. So yeah, right now, whether you agree or not, that's what they currently are doing at the Sanchez site. So I think I'll go ahead and move over there. If we have more questions?
We do, and I also wanted to mention a couple of folks in chat were correcting the Falcon 9 static fires, regardless of whether or not it's a flight-proven booster. If there's crew flying on it, they do static fire it.
Okay, yeah, that's a part of it that I missed for sure.
No problem. And so, yeah, a couple more questions related to Massey's here from Phil. With that test stand getting bigger, do you think it will get to a point where a test tank is stacked in one of the mega bays?
Possibly. They've done it in the high bay in the past. I feel like, and I could be wrong, that the Star Factory should be tall enough for them to fully stack something like that, because this is about the height of a nose cone and payload section, as at least if it was sitting on top of this stand right here. So I feel like that could be fully done inside of the Star Factory, and I think eventually they would probably want to have like a test article that's an aft section, forward dome, and then put the inner stage on top of it, and a ship aft section on top of that. So that's basically like almost 3 separate components that they're testing all at the same time. And so you can stack all those on top of each other inside of here and do that. They don't necessarily need to come out as one piece.
All right, a couple more questions related to this test stand, and we can move on to Sanchez. But Michael Bertoldi is asking, do you think they'll use this test stand to test HLS stuff or build something else?
That's a good point. Yeah, I think with HLS, they're definitely going to have to do a lot of structural testing with the crew compartment. I mean, the tank section of the ship is relatively the same to every other version of the ship. So, that I don't think they'll have to test the full structure, but what they will need to do is that nose cone section or the actual crew compartment as well too. So, I think it's a possibility that they'll do that in here. However, they still have this nose cone testing structure right here, which they have not demolished yet, or scrapped yet. So I think there's a good chance that this will probably still end up being used for that.
All right, final question for Massey's from Crane Man. Wouldn't it be a problem if the booster test tank rests on the Raptor mounts when depressurizing the tank for lifting it onto the test frame?
I don't think so. I'm not sure why that would be the case. I think the actual valves and pipes that go into the Raptor engines would either be capped off and then they're just attaching to the actual mount locations. So I don't think there will be any effect on like pressurization of the test article. And also the test articles usually don't need to remain pressurized at all times because they're so small that they're not really worried about them being able to support themselves without being pressurized from the inside. So yeah, I'm not sure if that would be a concern at all.
All right, sorry, had to sneeze there. All right, we are clear to move to Sanchez.
Cool. So yeah, continuing on with that discussion, these pedestals right here, the equivalent of that for the orbital launch structure is basically what that structure is currently resting on top of. And I'll get us over there right here. This nice side angle will hopefully show it a little bit. Oh yeah, you can see one of them right here. So basically resting on top of a pedestal right now, 4 of them in the corners. This is currently also being supported in 2 locations on each side as well too. However, I think this is only for the purpose of keeping all of this level. So once all of this stuff is welded together, they theoretically could pull some SPMTs in here, lift it up, and then remove these, although I don't necessarily think there's a reason for them to do so. But yeah, these are actually perfectly spaced out for SPMTs to roll in here between the pedestals and get up underneath the structure and lift it off. So right now, this structure is bolted onto these pedestals. So that's if you were to walk into one of these access hatches, that's what you would see is a whole bunch of bolts sticking up from the bottom of the pedestal going through the actual through the floor of this, the base structure of this. So yeah, I mean, they already have the holes to do it. So all you would need to do is just move it over to the launch pad and place it on top of equivalent pedestals, probably a little bit heavier duty, which I've mentioned in the past. They may not look the same as this, but they'll basically be the same as far as purpose goes. So yeah, that makes it really easy to attach and detach this and move it when you need to. there is also a possibility that even if it does rest on top of pedestals like this, that they could end up welding it to those pedestals, which I personally don't see happening, but it is a possibility. But as far as actually needing legs for the launch mount, I don't think that's what we'll see. It would look pretty funky, I think, if it was on top of legs.
Zach, I'm apologize. I've been away for a while. This is the new launch mount? That thing looks amazing. That's crazy.
It's quite the departure from the previous design. I really like it. I think it really just simplifies things quite a bit. As far as we can tell right now, the only mechanical components that will be actually inside of the structure are the hold down arms. So with getting rid of the Raptor QDs, this is a significantly more simplistic structure.
Wait, where are the Raptor QDs going?
So as far as we know right now, that's probably going to be the same system through the booster QD. So, this pretty much what they do when they start the center engines is use the booster QD in the same way that they do with the Raptor QDs. So instead of injecting directly into those engines, there's a manifold. Around the ring of 10 engines, which then distributes the gases to those engines. So you're basically, all of your startup happens through the booster QD, and then when it's in flight, they use the COPV tanks to do relight. So instead of attaching QDs directly to the outer 20 Raptors, you'll pretty much more than likely end up with a larger gas injection port on the booster QD, or potentially even a second booster QD just for engine startup. That will basically take the place of the Raptor QDs.
Wow, that's way simpler. But you are adding a layer of complexity onto every booster after that, though. But it was a great idea to build it straight into the frame of the old launch pad. But yeah, this is simpler in some ways, more complex in others, and we'll see which one wins out. Who knows where they'll be a year or two from now.
Yeah, agreed.
But yeah, this thing looks like it came right off the Large Hadron Collider, man. It could be any sci-fi movie right here.
Yeah, it's a pretty massive structure, and I don't know. I think it's weird for a lot of people seeing it square. I think it's pretty awesome the way that they've changed this design up. And as y'all can tell, in between this week and last week, they actually got that last section lifted into place. So I think this was the one that was missing. And they currently, which is cool that you can actually see this from this altitude, looks like they've tack welded these down. So there's like, I don't see one in the corner right here, but weld here, weld there. I believe one right here. Then you can definitely see them on the corner sections over there. So they've done their initial welds to actually join the structures together. I think up here, they're probably adjusting the position of this a little bit, because you have these massive grooves that are in between each section, where you basically have to do multiple passes of welding in order to join it to the so it's flush with the top plate. But yeah, they're basically getting set up to begin all of that welding work, which is going to take quite a while. I think I mentioned this last week, but yeah, they'll have to weld these seams in between each of the modules, and then also fully weld it to the base structure around the perimeter. And more than likely, they'll be inside of the launch mount as well, or inside of the base structure, welding anything that contacts any of the wall sections that contact the top of this or the bottom of this. Where else? On the inside edge down here, below this platform, you'll also have to weld the basically square perimeter that is underneath this. So tons of work left to do for this section of the launch structure.
Yeah, and Zach, one thing you can see here, I didn't catch it last night, on the side segment that faces the highway, you can actually see they've put the 3 ring ribs in between the corner and side sections as well.
These.
Yep. Yeah, those are those ones, and then to the right there, to the right of that side piece, all 6 of them are there, three on each side.
Are you talking about over in this corner?
Yeah, it's just up a little bit farther, but
I think I have a view looking straight down on this, so let's go ahead and look for that.
But yeah, I had not realized that last night, but essentially at the top of it, all those 3 right there, and then the 3 to the right. So they've started getting those internal rings connected as well.
Yeah, so that'll go around the entire perimeter. They got, like you said, two of them done so far, and have to go pretty much all the way around. And then also adding in these missing sections on the outside edge, and the inside edge will happen. That'll probably be the last thing they do. That'll give us a sign that they've finished up all of the rest of the welding once they start doing that. Yeah, I'm really excited for this. The amount of work that's happening on it is really awesome. It's even more awesome that it's pretty much, for the most part, showed up as like an IKEA set that you just have to put together, because the first launch mount was I don't even know how to describe it. It was kind of done on the fly, I think. I feel like they had a base design for the actual ring structure, and they basically ordered the superstructure, and while they were waiting for that to be fabricated, they started planning out all the rest of the stuff on the inside. So by the time it arrived, they had tons of modifications to do on it, whereas this was clearly fully designed. They're probably completely done with design work on this, and that allowed them to ship it out with everything already pre-cut. So like even things like this, cutouts through the wall, like those types of cuts happened on site with the first launch mount. So yeah, they've progressed quite a bit as far as their fabrication process goes. And yeah, even the top deck of the launch mount, that also you could argue that this is another part of that IKEA set. So, you know, all of these components for the water-cooled deck were basically arrived, and all they had to do was join them together. So I think they're still missing a few pieces of this, but you can see at least 3 completed sections. I believe this is, I think it was, how many will there be total? I'm trying to figure that out here.
There'll
I think
be 8.
there'll be 8 of them.
Yeah. There'll be
2
8.
for each side.
Yeah, there'll be 8 total. Right now, they've got 6 segments that make up the inner circle with the curve piece, and they've got 3 of the outer pieces. So they don't quite have even an even number of pieces to make up the 3 there. But yeah, they're coming along. We'll see 4 of each of those 2 that are kind of next to each other that are mirrored pairs.
Right. Yeah, so these 2 are probably for this side right here, which is really cool. I mean, this thing's like a puzzle. I think if you want to make like a Lego set for this, it'll be super easy. Yeah, this is really cool. And we also have some other components that are related to this happening over here, which I actually have a new theory on that. So when I get a different angle of these, if I can, the sun angle is not the greatest. If I had a top down, that'd be a little bit better, but I don't think I do. Okay, well, I guess I'll go back to one of those overhead shots in that case. Actually, these overhead shots don't, okay, that'll work. Yeah, so we have these little sections right here, which I think I've showed on previous episodes from Chrome Kiwi. Kind of been thinking that these are related to the flame bucket, so I'll go ahead and bring that up again, actually. I'm pulling this up on X in the background, So just give me a second here.
While you're digging that up, Zach, I have a guilty pleasure. I really enjoy watching you on X argue with the people, or not argue, but discuss with people about what they think and what you think. And it's like, you're the king of "see, I told you so." So I love watching it. And then it's always, you're almost always right. Yeah, nobody's perfect, but the stuff that you get right is stuff that nobody saw ahead of time. So it is quite fun to watch that, actually.
It is a bit tiring. I've kind of stopped for the most part because I realized, you can talk about individual points because people will bring up individual points to like counter the argument, and then you address that, but then you're not telling the whole story. So instead of discussing it point by point, I figured I would just make a whole episode about it. So that's what I'm currently working on right now, and it's made my life a lot easier not arguing with people online. So
I imagine it would make it much easier. I'm definitely looking forward to that one.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one for sure. But as you can see here, this is Chrome Kiwi's representation of the flame trench. And let me see if I think I may need another angle. This is good, actually. So these are the ribs that go around the slope, essentially. So the actual ramp where the bucket is going to rest. And I did originally thought that made sense, and it was like, dang, that they're actually building the entire thing on site. However, there are some components of this. If this is how it's going to look. Well, actually, let me back up. So this is kind of almost identical to the design at Massey's, and so that's why Ashley designed it this way with the full U shape. However, what we're seeing at the Sanchez site currently is missing that third piece. And so there are some other components down here which that could be added on. However, they haven't done it on any of them yet. So I think there is a second option that should be considered here, which is that these could actually be the frame for the moving platform. And so I'm going to go back over to this actually again. Let me see, where is the render, right, the animation? Yeah, so this animation is actually really good because I'm just going to zoom in on that. A lot of thought, I think, went into how the actual doorway will work. So at Massey's, there was a single door, and it moved to one side, moved over the opening of the trench. But there was only one side of that flame trench. So they made it long enough so that the platform doesn't obstruct the opening here. So with this, if you only had one platform, it would move over so far that it would kind of limit the opening on one side. So with the way that Ashley has this designed, it actually splits in two and then moves over to the side. Let's actually play that again. So yeah, that I think that this platform for the launch site is going to have to be significantly more heavier duty than what was at Massey's. And I wish I had this prepared, because I actually showed this to them the other day. But what I think that these are potentially the actual supports for that I think these may actually be the supports for the platform. So they basically would have a layer of concrete on top of this, but there would be like a frame, rectangular frame that's made from these sections, and then there'll be a thick concrete pad in the center of that, which will allow the door or give it a lot of support, because it's going to have to basically support the weight of the SPMTs with this structure on top. And I think Alex who made a good point that it's not the full weight of the structure that will rest on that door, because the SPMTs will basically, let me go back to this one more time. So the SPMTs will be really long, so they'll extend past the edge on either side. So you only have like the middle section of that SPMT actually weighing down on this roof structure. That's a little alternative theory that I have here, is that these are actually related to that, the platform. It'll be interesting to see whether or not that ends up being the case. One thing that, just looking at Massey's as an example, that roof platform structure was fully assembled on site, whereas the components of the flame bucket were delivered assembled, and then they were delivered in sections similar to how this the water cooled plate is. So I want to think that the actual flame bucket itself will start arriving soon, as far as the actual frame components, and then the actual pipes for the bucket. I don't think any of that stuff will be assembled on site. There is a manifold that we've seen underneath here that does look like it's part of a water manifold, but I think that basically just attaches on to the structure that is probably going to be arriving soon.
Yeah, I think when you had kind of floated that option, I think both. I think we don't have enough evidence to go one way or the other, but I think it's totally plausible that these could be ribs for the platform structure. I mean, the U-shaped cradles for the flame bucket at Massey's did come in a little bit more assembled, but there was a lot of assembly on site as well. So we'll have to wait just a little bit longer, I think, to see a couple more pieces.
Yeah, and I actually just found a good image that I can show here. So give me 1 second. I want to make sure it shows the full frame. So this is it right here, actually. This is what that platform looked like. So I would imagine that whatever we're going to see is similar to this, probably a little bit more square. Instead of rectangular, or actually be basically two rectangles like this. And then those ribs that we're seeing, I'm not sure which direction they'll go, but, basically you ended up with a kind of a pan that was in here. So they put sheet metal on top of this, corrugated panels on top of this, and then they poured a layer of concrete on top of that. So these are basically the support for that concrete, the concrete pad. So I think it's something very similar to this is what we're actually seeing there at Sanchez. I'm going to go back to that. Sorry, I'm trying to find a good image to show them again. But yeah, this is one of those ones that could very well go either way, but it is a second option for what these actually, the purpose of them is. But right now there are, I think, 6 of them. And then there's a bunch of little pieces to make more of them. So I think we'll probably even see more of those arrive as well, too, because most of this stuff seems to be fresh off of the fabrication line. They're being delivered essentially as soon as they're being completed. So, that's kind of how it's worked out for all of the modules of the launch mount. And the actual water-cooled plates for the top. All right. Moving on a little bit. Actually, let's go ahead. I know we're going to have questions. I said this last week as well, too. So, Astro Joe, do we have any more launch mount related questions right now?
We have all the launch mount related questions right now, but I want to thank Jax for gifting a membership. Damien Babby, will BQD be installed on the OLM or be a separate structure like the ship static fire pad at Massey's?
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Definitely. Will the BQD be installed on OLM or be a separate structure like on the ship static fire pad at Massey's?
Well, we don't know yet. It can go either way, but one thing that is going to make that clear, like what their plan is, will be when the remaining plates for the actual top deck arrive. So if they end up having 8 of these, then there's a good chance that the booster QD will be separate from this structure, because it'll interfere with the water system. But there is still a chance that it could be mounted on top of this. And Ashley actually had a good representation of a potential method for how they might do this. You can see there's 2 different QDs here. Let me see if there's a side view.
Yeah, I think the other hint could be that if we start seeing a few plates that have slight modifications from what we've seen so far, that would have a cutout for where the quick disconnects would be over the top of them. It could be almost maybe a hybrid.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and even with something like this, theoretically, they could end up having the entire enclosure for that booster QD also be part of this water system. So that would be interesting. But yeah, with the way that this one is designed, let me go back and look at it from the front if there's a front angle. Yeah, so there's 2 different QDs. One of them is the standard booster QD that we're used to seeing. And then there's a second one, which will be for basically replace all of the Raptor QDs. So this will be purely for engine startup. So that'll be interesting. I was kind of hoping that they would be a bit more symmetrical, so one in the front, one in the back. But, again, this is just a conceptual possibility right here. So yeah, we don't know if there will be 2 or if they'll accomplish this all with 1 QD. With how much gas is required for each of those engines, it may be a good idea to split it into 2. Of course, that does add a little bit of complexity, but yeah, the thing about it either way though is that if it is mounted on top of the structure, that can still move with it. So one of the things that in order to connect it to the ground pipework, all you really need is perfect tolerances on hard pipes, or to basically use flex hoses, which will give it a little bit of wiggle room. And then you're just basically doing the same thing that they do right now on the first launch mount, which is like disconnect those flex hoses. So you disconnect the flex hoses and or remove them entirely, and then move the structure away. And then once the new one comes in, you just reinstall those hoses, and then you're good to go. The big question, no matter how they, whether it's interchangeable or not, is going to be how they're supplying water to the actual deck, which is something that we haven't seen yet. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised actually if the water manifold basically turns all of this into essentially a big QD structure going all the way across. And so like you have your water injection manifold that then spreads it throughout the table, but enters only through one side right here. So that could be pretty interesting, but a lot that we have to wait on to see.
Yeah, for sure. Crane Man is questioning, why are you so sure the flame trench will be a two-way system with the deluge in the middle? Wouldn't it be better if the torch from the booster hits the angled deluge pipes in the middle?
Yeah, so that's one part of this design that I am not sold on. Is the way that this, I mean, we know for sure that it's a two-sided flame trench, but what we don't know is what that diverter is going to look like, and that's one of the issues that I've personally had with a design like this, is how close the engines are going to be firing on this center piece right here. I think you would actually have all three of the center engines, and then one ring of 10 engines, so 2 ring of 10 engines, plus 4 of the outer 20 engines. So that's what, 9 engines total that are basically firing onto this centerpiece right here. So that's my big thing about this, is that I'm not sure if I fully agree on, is the way that it's going to look in the middle. It's going to be interesting to say the least. But yeah, I don't know if that answers the question or not. But I guess my point is that this is the main part of the design that I'm not sold on.
If you were trying to fix this design, would you throw like a giant shower head right in the middle there, or just narrow down the point, maybe make it even lower?
I'm not sure, honestly. I don't really know what the best way to do it is. Like, theoretically, you could just wouldn't be a good idea at all. Actually, is just have a flat surface down here, then a slope to actually help it curve upwards. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, tough thing to fix. Tough
Peter,
problems.
What are your thoughts?
I know I'm at a loss. I think I feel like I need some more concrete evidence from actual build, even if it's just the early parts. I know the flame bucket pieces we've talked about and their alternative options. They kind of pointed me towards something similar to Massey's just because of the similarity in pieces. But I mean, I'm not sure. I think there's a lot of options, and I'm not. None of them are clear to me.
Yeah.
I was kind of hoping we'd see something at McGregor where they were testing against the water cooled plate a while ago, or something where we see a V and they're hitting it to see how it spreads. But I don't think anything has shown up there yet to give us ideas.
Yeah, no, I think the only thing we've seen related to this at McGregor is basically the hold down arms that will go in these cabinets. But that's pretty much the only thing related to the launch mount that we've seen there. Cool.
All right.
Additional
All right.
questions, Astro
Oh
Joe?
yeah, we got a lot of questions. From Wrangler, why is the stand seen as mobile? There's been no info on that.
I mean, it's pretty much just an idea based on what I think is necessary, and that's entirely based on everything that we've seen over the first 5 flights. All of the issues that they've had with getting ready for additional flights, or basically the turnaround time between flights, is partially due to waiting on launch license stuff, partially due to modifications that need to be made to the booster or ship because of data that happened from the previous flight, and partially due to maintenance that's required on stage 0. And that maintenance required on stage 0, while some of those issues that they've had will be solved just purely based on the design of this, there are others that won't be solved just based on the design of this. So with that said, because there's still going to be issues that are going to affect rapid reusability, I think that the best way to get around that is to have multiple launch mounts and switch them out when necessary. So there is no official word on this, but there was also no official word on removing Raptor QDs. There was no official word on the actual flame trench itself when I mentioned that they would probably go with the flame trench design. So I don't know. I'm sticking with my opinion on it because everything that I listed out, other than it being interchangeable, has happened so far. So I don't really have a reason to deviate from that thought process.
And if you're still questioning it out there, make sure you sign up to Zach's channel and watch his one of his newer episodes when they come out, because I know we're going to go a lot into that.
Yeah, that's my goal for this episode, is to convert everybody, and like I said, whether it ends up happening or not, I still think that it's the best way to go. So in my opinion, if they end up permanently attaching it, I will consider that a mistake. But yeah, they do make mistakes, and they also learn from those mistakes, which has happened a lot in the past. There's been tons of things in the past that have happened where as soon as they started doing it, we were like, wait, why are they doing that? And then, a lot of the response is, oh, you think you know better than them? Not necessarily, but some of these things are just like, as an example, the flat surface underneath the launch mount. I think everybody and their mom was like, why are you guys doing that? and that ended up being a huge mistake. So things like that, learning from what has happened, that's what I base my opinions on. And obviously, reinforce those opinions once the evidence presents itself.
So what you're saying is you do know better than them.
No, not at all. I just know what I would do. And a lot of times what I think is the best way to go ends up kind of being what they end up going with as well, too. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. This is not, and I'm not just saying like myself as well, too. Like a lot of people that I talk about this stuff with usually feel the same way. It's like a group thought process, which is basically the same process they go through. Talk about different options in groups and discuss the pros and cons of each one of them, and then they make a decision on what to go with. So there's no chance that the idea of an interchangeable launch mount wasn't at least considered, or potentially the option that they decided to go with here. So that part is yet to be revealed.
Oh yeah, and you got to consider there were always trade-offs. When they built the booster quick disconnects, like the 20 of them, they committed themselves to like one stationary, booster deck, and it was going to be impossible to change that on a regular basis. Now they might have different options and, more opportunity, but you might make one great decision that then requires 5 less great decisions to be stuck to afterwards. Such is life.
Yeah. I think I could be wrong. I'm probably wrong. But if this was permanently mounted to the deck or over the trench, I think this would be one of the only launch pads with a flame trench that didn't have the actual launch structure capable of moving out of the way. I have to double check that info, but I'm pretty sure every launch pad with a flame trench has the ability to get the launch structure out of the way, which is necessary if you are inevitably going to end up having to do maintenance work on the actual flame diverter, because unless you're pumping out Niagara Falls from this thing, at some point in time, it's going to require maintenance. The water does a great job of deflecting the flame, but there's still, measurable wear on the structure over time. Even the flame bucket at pad 39A has had to be resurfaced. I believe the 39B one has had to be resurfaced as well too. So whether it's completely swapping out the flame bucket after like 400 launches, you need to swap it out. How are you going to do that if you have the launch mount in the way? You can't drive down here with a crane. That slope is way too big. You can't lift it out through the center of the launch mount. So ideally, you better have a way of getting this launch mount out of the way, specifically, at least for the purpose of doing maintenance work on this. And that is exactly what they did with the flame trench at Massey's. So again,
Hey, you're way overthinking this. Just never maintain it, and eventually the rocket will take it out when it's time. It'll just take care of itself.
Yeah.
All right. Well, in the middle of all of that, you did answer a bunch of questions, and for the sake of time constraints and redundancy and you repeating yourself, we can go ahead and move on.
Ooh,
Thanks,
awesome.
Joe. Somebody's got to keep us on track.
Yeah, I was feeling the timer, the virtual timer in my head as well too. Moving on, what else do we have at Sanchez, Todd or BJ?
Well, one tiny little thing. I know there's enough crane fans amongst our community. One of the things we saw was that they took the jib tip and the block off and brought them from the LR 11,000, and it's next to the GSC building. Turned out they're just doing some maintenance. It's to the east in the shadow, to the east side in the shadow right now. You need a more overhead shot than this one to see it, but they pulled all the pulley. Yep, we can see it in that one. It'll be at the front corner. You can see all the circle discs. It's very much in the dark, but it looks like they've pulled all the pulleys apart, which it makes sense why just
right
those
here.
pieces. Yep. So that's the jib piece. The block is to the left, and it looks like they're just doing pulley maintenance.
Yeah, I guess when you actually own the crane, you have to do all the maintenance yourself on site.
Yeah, it was just one of those things. It was interesting that, and it took me a while to find him yesterday, but because we saw him come here, and we're curious if it was a maintenance thing or something or what it was.
Right. Cool. What else? I know we have some massive scaffolding work going on the carriage, which if you didn't know the carriage was here, you probably wouldn't be able to find it.
Yeah, that scaffolding's been there for 2 or 3 weeks now for all the reinforcements. I'm really curious when they finally get rid of it, so we can kind of see. I feel like as much as they've got there, they've done more than what they did to the carriage on Tower A, but obviously there's so much stuff there we just can't even see what they've done.
Well, a lot of this scaffolding, I think they've added even more than what was here last week, though, right?
I don't think so. I think it's all the same.
Yeah, I guess it may just be the lighting that's making it difficult to see the actual carriage here.
Yeah, I think
you can still see you can still see the tips coming out right here.
Yeah, and the bottom on the highway side, I think last week still had some mesh around them for welding underneath, some wind protection.
Right. Yeah, it looks like the remaining gas cylinders arrived here, the gas cylinders and the accumulators.
Yeah, someday they'll install them. They've been sitting under there for quite a while. It looks like the new thing, I think, is all that is the cladding. I think that they use for it is all those pieces just below, and there's some other ones around. But I think those are the shells that they put around all the ones on Pad A's tanks.
Right here.
Yep. Yeah, and I think the ones to the left are the covers that were some of the accumulators on the chopstick landing hardware had some covers and all that as well.
Interesting. Yeah, they haven't done this. They haven't done that on Pad A, right? Yeah.
The 4 lift actuator, the accumulators for the 4 lift actuators for the landing rails have protection on them, but not the actual, not the dampeners.
Okay.
But yeah, just another week of continued work. I mean, nothing really visible. I think they're just working on some of those new joints, especially those ones out on the sticks that they didn't reinforce on the longer sticks.
Yeah, it's gotten so cluttered here in the last few weeks. Sometimes it's hard to spot out the little details of things that are going on. It's always changing at Starbase.
Yeah, that's a constant for sure. Yeah, and I mean they're still basically finishing up on the QD arm. This looks like it's mostly complete. I think I haven't seen scaffolding over here in a while, so there's definitely still potentially adding some reinforcements here. I think possibly, or they just this is what it's looked like the whole time. I'd have to go back and check some previous images to see if it looks like they're actually preparing to add some similar reinforcements between the welds like they did on the chopsticks. I'm not sure why that would be necessary for this, unless they noticed issues with the current GSE arm that makes them want to add some additional reinforcements here. But yeah, looks like it's mostly good to go.
Yeah,
actually,
recent work they were doing some welding on some of the lower components now that they've got the hinge all the way complete. So one of the things we've noticed is that down below in the shadows there, a lot of the original filler pipe, the straight pipes, that were painted black, and it seemed to not be the appropriate size. And it's the farther left on the other side of the road, next to that trailer there, and then to the bottom. We can see in the arm that there's a lot of rusted pipe. It seemed that a bunch of the prefabricated pipes might not have been the right size for the as-built fit. So we saw that they brought in a bunch of just unfinished pipe and were cutting it specific for locations. And we can see that in some of the spots where I think they found some fitment issues with the primary tubing and ended up having to get some secondary stuff in and fabricate on site new pieces.
Right. Yeah, and I guess now that I think about it, misspoke a little bit because the actual structure itself may be completed, but they have not installed any of the pipework in here, which I believe they'll probably do all of that before they actually move it out. So Still a decent amount of work left to do with this if they're going to install all of that here before transporting it.
A real quick basic question: is this the carriage and arms from Kennedy? Did they transport it over, or is this something fresh they're building from scratch here?
Everything but the actual QD arm came from KSC.
Sweet.
Or Roberts Road. Yeah.
And these are the shorter arms that are faster to move?
Yep. Yeah, they're really tiny. It's going to be crazy to see the first catch attempt with these.
We're going to call these the T-Rex arms or something?
Yep. Yeah.
I was pretty worried about those short arms at first, but after watching the first catch, it's like, oh, never mind, they got it.
I know, right? That was insane. Like, I'm still like, what? They did that?
And it was a little more than a month ago, and we're ready almost to do it again.
Dude. I still have time. I might just drive down. I don't know.
Moving on, I guess, from this, let's see. We do have some other work going on near the rocket garden, which is probably worth mentioning. Nothing too serious, but it looks like they're just adding in some electrical work for the actual, I guess I want to call them like the staging pads, I guess, for the boosters. So they've kind of like made cutouts in the concrete here, and it looks like they're doing some electrical work, which Jake pointed out to me this morning is something they did on the other stand down here. So there's some cuts going through the concrete where there's some electrical lines going underground. So little minor detail, but worth pointing out. Other than that, I don't know if there's really anything else to mention down here. Are there any other Sanchez related things we should discuss, BJ or Todd?
No, Sanchez has been pretty quiet this week. I mean, we've seen the kind of full integration of the crane yard, SPMT yard over here, and we'll see what's taking the old one when we get there. But yeah, I mean, the OLM really was the only thing that had a real significant amount of stuff. There was some little stuff here and there, but it was rather quiet, it seemed, this week.
Yeah, I agree with BJ. The crane yard is definitely, that's been set up more and more for that. And like you said, we'll see what the other old crane yard what's going on there soon.
Do you think this one will be permanent now, or
is there anything permanent at Starbase?
Yeah, it's not going back where it came from, but yeah, there's never anything permanent here.
True. Cool. I guess moving on, we will go over to the production site area. Not a ton to talk about here. Not too many changes from last week as far as outside of these structures go. But I would say the parking garage finally looks like it's nearing completion. They got some lights up on the top deck. Now all of the scaffolding is gone. So I would say this thing is mostly completed.
Yeah, it looks like they just got a little bit of stuff to work on around it, getting driveways and just finishing up all the construction excavations around.
Yeah, I was wondering if they'll extend the outdoor parking lot, or if this will kind of remain how it is until whatever comes next as it relates to the high bay and all of this stuff over here. So,
I'm gonna call it Astrogen on this. Pointed out that the one car up there, that is somebody who does not want to get door dings. We all got a good laugh out of that last night.
Where's that?
Exactly.
Oh, over here.
She's cracking up over here too.
Yeah, I honestly do that. And I don't know if any of you have ever been to Black Hawk in Colorado, but there's the Ameristar Casino. I always park on the top floor of the parking garage so I can look down from my hotel room and see it because I don't trust people. Yeah. Anyways, moving on. Let's see. Most of these images we have are from the back side of it, but the one front side image, can't really see much this week, but we do have an empty high bay, if I'm not mistaken. So the high bay is empty. The booster bay, or Mega Bay 1, whichever one you want to call it, currently has 3 boosters inside of it. So actually, there's a good image from SpaceX that I can pull up here, which is really cool. So this was one they posted as booster 13 was rolling out. So you can see booster 13 rolling out. Back here in the background is the common dome, I believe, and LOX tank section of booster 16. And then the image that they showed from inside the bay, or that gives you a little peek inside the bay, you can see boosters 14 and 15 right here. So I think booster 15 is finishing up a few final touches before wait, sorry, let me just back up a little bit. Booster 14 has already done cryo testing, right? It's only booster 15 remaining to do that.
Correct. And then in booster 14, while we're talking about it, the grid fins for it made its way this morning. Grid fins went to Mega Bay 1.
Okay. Yeah. So we probably will see. Actually, we won't actually see it. It'll just all of a sudden be on a workstation, unless they wait until after cryo testing to move it onto that workstation, because usually most of the work they do over there is related to engine install. Although this is the cool thing about this, which I need to open up into another window for, you can see all of the scaffolding they have going all the way up to the top. So they do have these cool work platforms that allow them to access the tank at different heights. But even still, there's still scaffolding all up in here. So I personally am wondering, if this will eventually go away. Possibly not in Mega Bay 2 though, but when they eventually replace the high bay, I think whatever structure they build in there will eliminate the need for this. That's kind of something that we've seen in Mega Bay 2, in my opinion, is a lot more advanced than Mega Bay 1. So I think that when they replace the high bay, they'll have to basically move the booster stands into that building. And I think when they do that, they'll probably upgrade the supports or the support structures that are on the inside of the building. And then they'll redo Mega Bay 2 for basically ships. Although,
Hey, Zach,
yeah.
any word on when we might be seeing our first booster or ship that gets a Raptor 3 engine? Have we seen any of those out there yet?
No, I think that we've started to see them ramp up testing with Raptor 3 at McGregor.
Oh yeah, I saw like 50 relights. That was nuts. If that was a Raptor 3, that's impressive.
Well, as far as we know, that was most likely a Raptor 2, I believe. I don't know if they've gotten that far into testing with Raptor 3. I think they're like far and few between those Raptor 3 tests. But honestly, I'm not sure how people know the difference between the Raptor 2s and 3s, other than once you have an aerial image of what's on the test stand. So, yeah. I wonder if there's like an audible difference with them. I haven't really tried to compare that, but yeah, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, the only thing I guess I haven't really listened to it, but I know I've heard in the chats and stuff that supposedly Raptor 3s don't have that shutdown honk that the Raptor 2s have. Is the only thing that I've heard people using as a kind of to differentiate the two from the vertical test stands.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I guess as far as construction goes, we would just have to look to see if they remove some of the shielding from the underside of the booster and the CO2 tanks and whatnot.
Yeah, tons of things that will soon be eliminated from the boosters. I think we know that won't happen until at least booster 17, if not later. I think 16, with it already being stacked right now they've pretty much confirmed that it's still a V1 booster. So yeah, it's tough to say which one will be the first one, but honestly, I'm not sure how we'll know. That'll be a Ring Watchers thing to be able to actually determine that this booster looks like it's going to most likely have Raptor 3s on it. Because with the way that they install these, like in Mega Bay 2, well, yeah, that's probably where we'll see it first. We'll probably see some Raptor 3s transported to Mega Bay 2, and that's assuming that they don't arrive on a truck that just backs in through the doorway, and then they offload them so we can't see them. But if they somehow happen to go on a booster first, we won't know until it moves out for static fire testing, I would say, because that way we'd be able to actually look through the holes in the transport stand and be like, oh, wow, there's no shielding here. But, with the way that they store the Raptors in this building back here and then just, transport them straight into the install stands, there's really no way to know until you actually see the booster roll out for the first time.
They're covering it all up. They're trying to hide it from us, Zach.
They sure are. Yeah, it's
I think the only clue we'll have is if we get lucky with one of our photographers that catch it as it's going from truck into the Raptor room, because sometimes they can see those coming through. That's the only clue we'll even have, that they're on site, and we might miss that because that's all timing.
Yeah, I mean it's even difficult to see when those trucks arrive because of the way that they you used to be able to see them offloading here because you could walk down Remedios. Wait. Yeah. And you could see them offloading over here. But now, because this road is closed, we don't really get any images of that stuff. So very difficult to actually see when that stuff arrives. Maybe it'll have a special container or something that'll be the identifier. Doubt it, though. But yeah,
shout out to Jax and Ryson and all those Ring Watcher guys. Man, their attention to detail, man, it's been revelatory for all these fun engineering changes. Those guys are great. Yeah, and you're no slouch yourself there, Zach.
I'm the Ring Watchers are excellent at what they do. I like their approach of going about things because they do it in a way that nobody ever questions anything they say.
Right.
Which I've always been like super jealous of because they're just like so thorough. I feel like I'm pretty thorough sometimes, but like for one, they don't speculate very often, which that's all I do. So that's probably the reason why that's the case. But yeah, great group of guys. Continuing on, I guess we'll go ahead and move over to Star Factory. And I thought I had a wide angle of it, which I guess I don't, but I do want to show a wide angle. So let me actually just check and see if I have one at all. Oh, yeah, that's great right there. So yeah, Star Factory is looking really good. As far as what you'll see from the highway that makes it look like a complete building, they're finally finishing up this last remaining section right here. And so there's a few different things that are going on with that. They are moving over. I don't know what you call this.
Parapet wall.
Parapet, yeah, yeah. So they're moving. They're installing that right there. Actually, I'm going to have to go to a closer image in order to really look at that. So yeah, so that wall is being installed right now. You can see the posts right there for it. And that'll make it so when you look at it from the front, you won't see this little dip between the walls. So it'll look really, really cool. But yeah, they've finished up most of the roofing as far as on the sections of the building that are air quote completed. And they're also working on, I guess, would you consider this whole thing to be a parapet wall as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a combo of the exterior cladding with the parapet that sticks up. I mean, it's kind of both.
Yeah.
But they've definitely been making a fast progress on this because it seems they're using the through the roof to install it, so they can't finish off that lower roof until it's installed, at least up until where the roof is
yeah.
complete.
Yeah, that makes sense. That probably makes things a lot easier because you don't need construction equipment on the like heavy equipment on the building in order to like lift that stuff up there.
Yeah, and they'll probably have to do similar to what on the very far left. They're just finishing up. They're actually having to use the climbing scaffold and the off the roof, kind of the window cleaner, whatever they're called, the window cleaner structures on the left to finish off the cladding on the actual office itself.
Do they have those out here? I'm not seeing them.
Yeah, all the way to the left
yeah.
on the office itself, not on the factory.
Oh, right here.
Yeah, I have a feeling they're gonna have to use this. They're gonna have to use that to do that middle section where the roof is already installed.
Yeah. I guess they thought ahead down here, but not over here. So that.
Well, the steel, because of the way that lower section of that with the atrium or connector, whatever we want to call this portion, that's already roofed. The steel structure is a little bit more dense than what the actual factory is because of the way the geometry was. So they may not have had that option very easily.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, this is cool. I mean, they're getting really close to finishing up the actual shell of the structure. So once that's completed and they finish this roof and put this wall on, all the rest of the work will mostly be internal. So it's crazy that we're even approaching the end of this because it feels like it was just, a few weeks ago when they actually started the Star Factory. And yeah, I mean, the funny part about it is that even though you have this huge building, most of it's empty right now. So there's, I think I'm not sure whether it was Kathy or Gwen who mentioned that they're expecting it to be like fully operational, like second quarter next year, I believe is what it was said. But even that, in my opinion, is a tall order because there's just so many workstations that need to be completed. And honestly, I mean, they'll constantly be evolving as well too, but at least being able to actually fill all the workstations it is going to take quite a while.
Oh yeah, this is honestly, it'll never be done really, but it's going to take years to get 100% filled, and then they'll just expand it. So it'll never be done. Don't worry.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they could expand this building though. I feel like they've maxed out the available space.
Yeah,
Which
they can always build up.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, I mean, it's still an impressive structure. I'm excited for them to actually finish the office building over here because once they do that, as when I think the next major operation will occur, which is the destruction of the high bay, which I am anxiously anticipating. But yeah, they've gotten most of the exterior of this building completed, all of the windows, cladding for the most part, other than this tiny section right here, and still waiting on the air handling unit to arrive, if that's what this is going to be for. So yeah, waiting on basically the mechanical system for this building to arrive. And once that happens and once they close up the rest of this structure, actually, I think it's already happened. I can't tell. It looks like all of the temporary walls that they've had in here. Oh no, there's still some down there.
Yeah, you can see them at the top level. You can see the air conditioning. In the middle corridor,
yeah.
they were farther from the end of the mezzanine. It's only that other side where it was so close.
Right. Yeah, this building is really cool. This is I think if I had to choose one structure to visit the inside of, it would be a tough choice, but I may go for the Star Factory, I think. But that would be like a year from now and it's actually finished. That's when I would want to see it. All right. Let's see. I suppose we can probably move. Oh, wait, I guess one big thing still to talk about with the Star Factory. They've finally got the SpaceX logo on the front of the building, and I don't think it's bright enough. Now, actually, this thing is extremely bright. You can probably see it definitely in South Padre, that's for sure. But I imagine if you were in the ocean several miles out, you could probably still see it because it's extremely bright.
Yeah, and to think that it's only that same outline that they use, that the other signs on around the starbase are, that it's that bright.
Yeah, I almost was hoping that they would put the full SpaceX on here, but I think it's actually cleaner with just the X. That's really all you need because it's recognizable on its own, and also allows for these two floors to still have windows where you can see the launch site. So, cool. Yeah, and I guess as far as cladding goes on the front side, they're still working their way down the bottom level. But yeah,
Actually, the bottom is glass up to that white line. The only thing that's left
okay,
is that gap in the left is the only spot that is missing on the bottom.
right. Yeah, and one thing that you can't see when you look at it from these angles is well, I guess you can kind of see them. There's tons of doors going on the side. Obviously, with having egress for fires, you need doors all over the place. So that's one thing that I think a lot of people haven't been able to actually see is those doors that go all the way down the side. But I think the main entrance for this is probably, is there even a main entrance for it yet?
Best we could tell is it's on the far right side. There's two sets of double doors all the way underneath the SpaceX sign, kind of down on the end there. There's a
Yeah,
couple. There's a few single doors throughout that front space, but the main entrance seems to be on the right, which would make sense because the middle portion of the low section is where that full height atrium was. So
right. I did notice they got some holes drilled here. I'm guessing we're going to see some sort of.
awning for the main entrance,
Yeah, it's weird though.
like a pergola or something like that, some kind of entrance structure. Doesn't I think Bastrop has something like that at Gigafactory?
Uh-huh. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see what they end up putting there. It's shaped kind of funny right now, but yeah, and I mean, really the whole entranceway, I'm sure they'll do something cool with all of this. So that'll be probably the final touch-ups that they have coming soon. And that's also true going down past this. I guess I'll go back to that full image. So they've gotten this whole area cleared. It's been like that for quite a while. Kind of wondering what they'll do here. I don't think we'll see parking along the side, but potentially like turf or grass or like some sort of massive garden. That would be kind of cool too. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do with that going along here. Do you think there'll be parking? I'm hoping there's not parking.
The way that they put the pedestrian fence next to the palm trees and stuff, I don't see parking in there. I think it'll be just landscaping, and then that'll kind of help in the future when the potential widening of the highway can kind of ingress into that area.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. I guess I can move us on to the village area. Really, the only thing I guess to talk about here is this area where they've started, where the former crane yard used to be. So we mentioned at the Sanchez site where they moved the new crane yard to. So the old crane yard, they've moved everything out of there and have started to dig up the concrete here, and they got some trenches going on. I guess I'll look at this from a different angle, so stand by for that. So yeah, you can kind of see how big those trenches are from this angle, at least the one that they've started digging out. And I don't know, have you guys been able to tell is this all electrical so far? I mean, it kind of looks like there's some plumbing work going on here too.
Yeah, I think there's plumbing. We can see to the right of it in this image that the green and blue water pipes are stacked up for future there along that area, and then but there is a lot of conduit over in the on that little dirt strip on the other side of the processing facility. So I think it's a combination of both electrical and water that are being installed in there.
Interesting. Well, that makes me. I got a little speculation on what this is. What are your thoughts? What have you guys been thinking this is?
I'll let BJ say because I
Yeah.
fully agree with him, and he's
Oh,
why
good.
I think.
I was gonna let you. I was gonna let you chime in.
But we
It
think it's
seems
going to
like
be more trailers. Beat you to it. Yeah, it looks like more trailers, but all the stub outs, it looks like there's, multiple of the same thing coming up. And more trailers might be going in there. I agree with BJ. It's the best that we can do so far.
Yeah, that would be interesting because they haven't really done permanent plumbing, as far as I remember, for the trailers and the other lots, right?
No, they did.
Well, it wasn't as deep in the ground as this is. But one of the things that I've been looking for, I was actually talking to somebody about this yesterday. Not sure where it's located, but allegedly there already is a water treatment facility here, or they're building one. So I guess from what I was told is that most of these houses down here have containers on the side of them for where they store their water, and then I believe they all have septic tanks for each house as well. I could be wrong about that part, but I'm pretty sure that is the case. So from what I've been told, they need a water treatment facility so they can basically treat all of their wastewater. And I think I just got super lost. This potentially could be the start of a water treatment facility.
Interesting. And I think there's definitely a few options. But yeah, I hadn't heard that, so it's an interesting one.
Yeah, I guess that we should be expecting allegedly for some of these streets to be closed down. So having to close down half of this street, for example, so that they can dig a trench along the side of it, so that they can install basically a neighborhood water treatment system that connects all of these houses. So I think that's something that's supposed to start early next year. Cool. I guess with that, not sure if there's much else to mention down here. Not too much progress with the pool. I guess
the pool house there is being worked on. Event Dudes last night was able to find the tabs report for it. I was searching the Texas permit site this morning and I couldn't find it. So I was trying to look at it, but I think it's a 5,000 square foot building there that they're working on to go with the pools.
This one?
Yeah. Probably locker rooms, restrooms, showers, that kind of stuff to go
This
with
looks
it.
tiny. That doesn't look anywhere near 5,000 square feet.
Look at the car right next to it. I think that whole lot might be 5,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe they put a building over the whole thing.
Yeah. This looks. I was expecting the rec center to expand all the way out here.
Yeah, the fact that there was also the documents for the rec center and potentially separate ones, like I said, I haven't been able to find the report personally, so I was trying to look for it, but he had all the details.
Yeah, I'm surprised they haven't started that yet because the paperwork was filed so long ago. But yeah, I've yet to see the rec center appear, so all we can do is speculate that it's probably going to be right in this area.
I wonder if it was abandoned because the pool house actually, I think the dates that were on what was posted it wasn't supposed to start till December 5, I think.
For the pool house or the rec center?
For the pool house.
Okay.
And so I wonder if maybe the rec center permit stuff was actually abandoned and they're doing something different and smaller because I think it was like a $1.5 million rec center.
Wow. Cool. Do we have other questions from this area? I doubt it. I guess Star Factory related questions, Astro Joe, before I move us to the launch site?
Yes, absolutely. Quick question from John T. Will the high bay be removed over the holidays?
No. I think if it happens, we'll probably be able to figure out when they're getting close. If it's whenever that happens, I think people may start noticing things being moved between these buildings. although most of it will probably go in moving trucks and then just drive it over here down the road. There's a possibility that they may actually just like cart things out and move them over to that building through the factory. But yeah, I think we'll start to see them occupying this. The good thing about this building is that the windows, when any of the lights are on the inside at night, you can see through it. So we'll be able to get a good idea when they've started to actually occupy this building. But that is pretty much the thing that we're probably waiting for. So once this air handling unit gets installed, that'll be a hint that it's getting close to being operational. And then after that, we'll just wait to actually start seeing people in there working. And then yeah, the Stargate building will probably come down first, followed by the high bay.
All right, question from Moody Blues. Will the office be expanded eventually into the ring or scrapyard?
I'm guessing they're talking about like over into here.
I do believe that is the area in question.
I don't think so. I feel like they need these areas for possibly deliveries. I know they take deliveries on the other side of the building, but I think they also deliver things that like trucks that need to drive actually into the factory for like heavier items, drive into the factory so they can offload inside of the factory. I think that's what these doors are for. So I doubt that they're going to expand into this area, although it would make the building look a little bit cooler if this edge came all the way down. Yeah, I don't know if we'll see that or not.
And related, Crane Man raises the possibility, is there still a possibility of the backside of the office building can be used for interior development of Starship HLS, like manufacturing different large components?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that can happen pretty much anywhere within this factory. It's difficult to say like where to expect that. I mean, this is still technically an R&D facility, but they're also they have, I guess, what you can consider to be like a full production line. So part of the building will be where all the R&D related stuff happens. So like development of like the first HLS, or there'll probably be a whole section of this just for HLS. And I mean, it's difficult to say where in the building that's going to be, but more than likely somewhere in these taller sections. It could really be anywhere, though.
Right. And nice segue. That was my last question for this area. Nice segue. A $5 PayPal donation from Crane Man with a attached question for Zach. Could the angled ramps inside the flame trench for Pad B be used as a deluge plate instead of the angled two-way deluge ramp? Great show. Regards, Crane Man.
Cool. Let's go ahead and move over there. I'm a little confused by the question. I guess it was the whether or not the actual ramps going down to the bottom of the trench, if those could be the deluge plate. I mean, certainly possible. I mean, they're going to have a very, very large amount of water that's used for each of these launches, about 3 times more than what's currently being used. So, I mean, there could be water on the tower for all we know. So it's difficult. It's difficult to say. I'm still having a hard time imagining what the actual diverter system is going to look like. So I'm not sure how to answer that question yet.
Yeah, I think I was just reading that in the back channel too. I think what he might be kind of insinuating would be maybe that the center section directly under it would just be a flat plate, and then instead of like Pad A where it sprays out in all 6 directions, maybe it just sprays out in the 2 directions, and it doesn't have a diverter at all. It just is a plate at the base of the trench, maybe.
Yeah, that's kind of how I was thinking. Like the spray pattern will spray out that will help guide the exhaust flow in each direction. How like they have spray patterns under the first one that maybe they'll be going out.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a good possibility. It would be simpler in some ways. But I don't know. I mean, then you have the seam in the middle where everything is splitting to go to either side, but that you'll still get wear on the actual seam itself.
Wait,
So
I
that would
got
be
it.
interesting.
Build a pyramid instead of a blade. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of ways it could go. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen too many other designs other than what Chrome Kiwi has shown, but yeah, I mean, a flat plate on the bottom could be interesting, but that may just put them back in the same position that they're in with the orbital launch mount, except they have less angles for that exhaust flow to escape from. So yeah, I don't know. It's tough to say. As far as the actual flame trench goes, like I myself have not gotten too deep into the theoretical stuff for how the flame trench is going to work. This is I'm more just personally I'm paying attention to just the overall construction process instead of trying to anticipate what the actual trench design is going to be. Because this is a little bit different from, or actually a lot different from the way that they've done the Massey's trench. So yeah, I think after this launch, unless I'm kind of hoping that they don't rush for Flight 8 or Flight 7, because I would like to see them go full bore with constructing this over here, and obviously preparing for launch operations kind of gets in the way of that because they don't want to have massive amounts of equipment on site during launches. So yeah, I'm hoping that after Flight 6, that we'll see a lot more excavation work on this. They're still currently installing tiebacks through the wall right here. The sheet wall. What's the right proper word for
Sheet
it, CJ?
pile. Yeah, the sheet piles.
Yeah, the sheet piles. And do you want to talk about this as far as the tiebacks goes?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we saw them starting to be laid out last week, maybe even 2 weeks ago, and I really couldn't put two and two together on what they were. But all these long white strands appear to be the tendons for the tiebacks, which are going way farther than I expected. We kind of confirmed that with the one that's sitting down in the middle of the trench. And judging by how many there are there, I think we're in for a good bit of waiting still before we see excavation, because I think we got a lot of tiebacks still to install, and they've been going for over a month, 6 weeks, something like that already.
Right.
Also,
What is the process for it?
also not just what we're seeing now is as they go down, they'll do another row of tiebacks. It'll continue as it goes deeper. They're just tying out back the tops to get the start. They'll dig more. They'll tie it back, and it will just continue to do that as they go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
potentially. I know Alex, I think, is of the opinion that it'll just be one set at the top and that there won't be multiple levels because the fact that we'll still have walls of trenches. I don't know exactly his reasoning on that. I'm undecided on whether we'll see additional layers of it down lower.
so how do they actually install them?
But yeah, so essentially the installation project, the drill is going to go in and essentially drill a bore to create that tunnel for the tendons to go into.
One of the
Um,
locations where they've done that, or is that just something sitting there?
I think that's just a spool of cable there. I think most of I think that most of them may be just below level, and we haven't seen many of the actual tensioning collars be put on them yet. I think we'll start seeing them at some point a little bit more clearly. I don't know if some of those we can actually maybe see in the C shape of the sheet piles right at ground level. Some of them look like they might be exposed. I've been curious whether they've actually been covering them up a little bit. I don't know why they would need to do that, but essentially they drill a big well. It's kind of like almost like just a vertical well, but they're drilling a tunnel. Then the machine will push the tendons in, and then there's also a grout plant similar to what they were doing with the jet grouting, which is why it's the same machine. They will pump grout into the very base of the tendon to lock in the tendon into the ground. They don't grout the entire length of the tendon usually. It's just the kind of an anchor at the bottom end of it. And then they'll come back to the end. They'll put a collar over, usually multiple tendons, they'll tension the tendons and then lock the tendons into the collar, and that's what essentially tensions the tieback system.
Interesting. So do they fill in the hole that they bored?
Only at the base of where the tendon is secured to the soils. Usually it's an open cavity from wherever the grouting stops all the way up to the collar that locks it up where the sheet pile is.
What stops it from being pulled out?
Well, that grouting at the very base is essentially, it's a big anchor. It's put in under pressure, so it kind of expands into it, and I think that's part of why it's so long. And I know sometimes they're actually put into a collar where there's actually an air gap within the bore. I think there are other systems where it's completely backfilled as well. So we haven't seen cores to be able to do that here. So I don't think there's a casing around the tendons in this particular application. So it could be that it's just being backfilled, or they're just letting the soil collapse back in on the tendons.
Yeah, it's really crazy how long these are.
Yeah.
I mean, this doesn't even look like you can drill that deep, but I guess there's a.
It's just like a horizontal driller. It's 20-foot segments of pipe or whatever it is, and they'll just add more as they continue to drill deeper.
Where are those pipe sections?
Well, we can see some pipes there just above the excavator, above that yellow excavator right there. I know some videos I've seen on ones that actually have a outer core. You can actually see where they install a core, push it in, and then there's actually a drill bit extension in. So it's actually like they're actually almost drilling two bores at a time, a hollow one, and then the center drill bit that's actually pulling all the soil out of the tunnel.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna watch some videos on that, and then obviously probably end up making a video about it as well too.
Yeah. There's a number of different ones. It's funny that my YouTube feed, actually, I think I popped up a couple of them, and I don't even think I searched for them. They popped up in my recommendations for some reason or another.
I hate it when that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is.
But in there, it actually shows, in one of the videos I saw, that circle device next to the drill rig is actually used. Oftentimes the tendons are actually stored in bundles, which at first I thought were what these bundles are just below the image in the corner of the sheet piles. There's 4 of them. There was 5 last week, so I'm not entirely sure if those are related to the tendons as well. I'm almost starting to wonder if maybe the white structures are a casing that's around the metal tendons, potentially even. It's hard to tell from aerial images exactly what the components are. But in some instances, it's a bundle of multiple steel cables that make up the tendon, and they'll put that bundle in there, and then that spins as it's pushed into the hole to keep it from getting tangled up and all that kind of stuff, to make sure that you don't lose structural integrity of the cables.
Interesting. Yeah, this is quite the operation they got going on here, and simultaneously, while this tieback work is happening, they have they're still working on the commodities trench. So they've gotten. I'm gonna actually go for a different angle here. What's the best one? Yeah, directly above is pretty good. So they've gotten this L-shaped portion of the trench completed. You can see that there are more CFA piles going along down here. Not sure how far those go. It's difficult to tell, obviously, because they're all covered up. But yeah, they're preparing to extend out into this direction right now. And they're also preparing to finish the rest of this as well. So I'm actually surprised that they haven't already started doing all the rebar work for this yet. But yeah, they've already, mentioned this last week, already started running the actual vacuum jacketed pipes down here for the cryo tubes. So methane, oxygen, and then a vapor return line. It's actually a liquid vapor return line, but yeah, there's 3 main pipes here And then we're waiting to kind of see the rest of it, because there's some pipe racks that are going along the other wall. So all of the gas supply lines for both the COPVs and then the actual ignition system. Actually, sorry, you have your pre-pressurization lines, so two pre-pressurization lines for the LOX and methane tanks, and then you have all of the gas lines and also some electrical conduit that'll probably go there as well too for connecting to the comm system of the vehicle through the QD. So yeah, I mean, potentially, given what they put in here, we could make some inferences on how the actual QD system will work, because theoretically, let's say they these pipes go all the way to the end. If the second set of pipes on the other wall stops around this area, then that'll kind of give us a hint that there's going to be two QDs. So I think we'll know whether or not there'll be one or two QDs long before it actually happens, which is pretty cool. But I'm excited to see the next phase of this, because it'll answer a lot of questions. Moving on, I guess from that, I wonder if I have a good angle of the other side of this. Here we go. So this week, the drawworks for the basically Mechazilla, the large ADS-30Q drawworks, which they have an identical one on the first tower, that arrived this week. I did have some video actually of it being installed, but yeah, they did it pretty much immediately. So it arrived on a truck, and then about an hour later, it was inside of the building, maybe like 2 hours later. But I believe we're seeing that right here. I think it's partially covered up with like a tarp or something like that.
Yeah, just like over on the other side, they've got some protective stuff going on.
Oh yeah, some
over
tarping,
the
yeah.
top. So yeah, they're just partially covered up.
Yeah, I guess they don't want dust from the launch to land on top of it. But yeah, I guess initially what I kind of thought was that this may be a brand new unit, but turns out this is actually refurbished. So it looks really shiny and it's gray instead of red. But basically they, just take an old used unit and completely disassemble it, perform maintenance on pretty much all the internal components, and then repaint all of the external stuff to make it look pretty much brand new again. You probably can't even really tell the difference. So yeah, they've got that in here. On the opposite side, the cable spool, not the cable spool, but what do you call the thing that it sits on? The cradle?
Yeah, the cradle reel. So
Yeah.
it's still outside of the building.
Where is it? Do you know? It's right here.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is what the basically the dead end of the chopsticks. The cable spool will sit in here, right? Actually, yeah. It's not really the dead end technically, is it?
Yeah, I mean it's the spare cable that's on the dead end of the stop lock.
Right, and that allows them, so like if they needed to swap out the cable, that's how they would pull it through to the other side, right, through that cable spool.
Yeah, essentially your damage is usually going to happen on the segment of the cable that actually runs on the drawworks. The cables within the system that are in the tower that don't move, because like that first section of cable that goes from the dead end stop all the way to the top of the tower, that cable never moves during operation. So they can always you can think about it almost to the point that you can advance damage part of the cable out with whatever is left over on the spool to a certain degree.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah, so I guess we'll see this cradle probably installed early next week, or early this week, or sorry, wait, what's today? Saturday? Next week. We'll probably see that installed along with the actual cable spool, which is already on site, I believe. I think that is at Maybe they moved it to the storage yard, I think.
No, it's still here at the construction entrance over by the wall. It's in that pile by the vaults. You got the vaults to the left there.
Oh, here it is.
Yep. We still have it appears that the actual dead end stop is still over in Sanchez. It hasn't made its way over yet. So we'll still have to wait for that. However, I think early on in the process, there was maybe even some speculation that the actual location of that spool would be somewhere else. But I think now that they brought grade up in the very lower section, I think it's going to be in the exact same spot as it was on first tower. Well,
Yeah.
mirror image, but
Yeah, this angle is actually cool because it shows you some big changes away from the tower as well too. Because last week there was this huge pile of dirt over here, which was basically excavated out of this trench right here, and now you can see that they've pretty much removed most of it, and the launch site or the pad over here is mostly flat now. So also from this angle, you can see how big these the trench, the culvert is for the basically the supply pipes to and from the orbital tank farm to the integration tower. And actually looking at that from another angle, you can see that they've poured the concrete for the base, I guess, and they've got the walls formed up. It almost looks like they've already poured the walls.
It is poured. Yeah, we saw from Rover 2 yesterday they were pulling the forms off after the flyover.
Okay, cool. So they probably did that earlier this week and are already pulling the forms off, you said?
Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting. And this is going to be I want to say a semi-high priority area for them, because eventually they're going to want to finish the driveway that goes over to the tower, especially by the time the trench is ready and whenever they want to install the launch mount. So I think, well, actually they have this route around it, but they're also going to want to do the pipes in between these two areas. So this is going to need to be finished relatively quickly. I imagine they'll probably make it so that you can pull off the panels off the top of this and access the inside of it potentially, or they're going to have to lay all of the piping that they know they're going to need first, cover it, and then never see it again.
Yeah, I have a feeling. I have a feeling in this spot where the driveway goes over the top. I think they'll get it finished. They're going to get all the pipes in there, get them stubbed out at the end, and get them as far to the right as they need to, and just finish it off. And then they can do some maintenance and stuff. I mean, it's a big enough culvert; they can work within it once it's covered up, probably. But yeah, I think we're going to see pipes go in there real soon.
Yeah, what I would like to see is some forethought here, because we know the plan is to eventually have an air separation plant here. So I guess I'll go to this image. We don't fully know where it's going to be, but given that they're planning to do the land swap deal still,
no, the land swap is what was canceled this week.
Oh, that actually happened?
Yeah, they've abandoned it earlier this week. And the air separation plant, from the plans, it seems like it's actually that construction lot right there.
This?
Yeah, the best we can tell from the EA documents, which are, of course, are obsolete in ways. So, but it did appear to fit. It's within the footprint of where they're doing construction.
Interesting. So yeah, I guess what I would like to see is some forethought here, and actually a second trench laid beside the first one, because once that air separation plant is complete, the last thing you want is to have to dig another trench under while this is operational. So you'll have your driveway going over to here, and you don't want to have to close that down. I guess you could always, because you will have the driveway going over to pad A. I believe it'll fork off like right here, because you're going to have potentially more equipment that's installed in this area as far as tank farm related stuff. So it'll basically make a Y right here. And you won't really want to have to dig that up again later. So I think it would be interesting, and hopefully for once they're doing some planning and at least get that set up so that they won't have to dig it out again later. And again, if they're able to put removable concrete panels on top of this that are able to bear the weight of a potentially 500-ton launch mount structure, that could work too, and they'll be able to access it later without having to tear out the concrete. But yeah, this is really cool being able to envision, I guess, the layout of this pad a little bit better. As far as like the driveway and all that stuff goes, you can definitely tell exactly where that driveway is going to curve through, in my opinion. The fact that they started here really kind of seals the deal as far as that goes. But looking a lot cleaner over here in general now that they've gotten everything on the same grade, and they've finished the electrical conduit work that was going over to this building. So I believe it's almost difficult to even tell exactly where it went. But I believe did it curve down like this, or did it go to this side?
It goes to the four. There's the four vaults just above the tower, and then there was a single vault there in the middle as well. Everything was higher up. The pretty much right where the buckets, all those three excavators are at the top, is where the conduits ran through.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to grab another image down here, maybe if I can find.
But yeah. And in that last image, we could kind of see where all essentially the three locations where they popped up at, which we can't see here. There's two of them are all sitting in stub outs, and then there was that first part that was done last week already that was already turned into the building already.
Look at that. Sorry, so you were saying it came from here and then to this side?
It actually came. It came from the vault down. Yeah, you got the four vaults there as well as the single vault that was in the middle for whatever reason. That one doesn't make a total sense. It's just another junction point. I'm sure it has something to do with future tap ins or something.
Yeah, they've gotten more vaults over here too, right? So it looks like they're not done installing those.
Nope, doesn't look like it. I think there's going to be lots there because I would imagine somewhere in this middle area is where the Deluge tank farm probably is thought to be. So there's going to be layers to go yet.
Yeah, and the question is how much drilling they still have left to do, because that drilling rig left so long ago, or probably about a month ago, I think it left, and so. Assuming that they may have drilled several rows all the way over to this vault and potentially already drilled, assuming they've done in front of this building right here as well too. So there's probably a ton of underground piles all throughout this area. I forget the total count that it was that we were expecting. It was in the 400s as far as total CFA piles between both the tower, flame trench, and all of the commodity stuff. So, this is night and day difference from pad A. Like it was nowhere near as reinforced as this is. So, incredible difference between the two launch pads, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the piles. We know that there's that row that continues from the trench, from that culvert that they're working on now, and there should be, if I remember correctly, there's another row of them above and a row between that culvert and the comms bunkers. So it'll be interesting to see where all of them start being. Yeah, it'll be curious to see where they all start getting excavated to what they are. At one point, I was almost thinking maybe the two other rows are for Deluge Farm, and it's going to straddle over the prop culvert, but I don't know how realistic that actually is.
Yeah, the Deluge Farm is going to be the interesting thing because, I'm curious if they're going to need another trench next to this one or something like that, because Well, I suppose if that was going to be the case, they'd probably already have the sheet piles in the ground for that. But the water pipes are going to be massive, so I don't think they could really fit in this trench with everything else.
Yeah, I've always been of the opinion that I think the water pipes are going to come from the north side of the tower into the middle somewhere, but time will tell.
Yeah. And the actual location of that farm is TBD, right?
Yeah, I mean, that one diagram we saw would say that it's from this view, it's to the right about where that front end loader is leveling out some dirt, but to the east of the fluids bunker. But who knows whether that's still true?
Are you talking about over here or
Yeah, to the right, to the east there. Yeah,
right here? Yeah, I'm not very good with doing east-west
yeah.
here
Especially when we got pictures from north and south, and east is to the left, or east is to the right sometimes,
yeah,
or east to the left, and then really confuse you. I get confused all the time.
for sure. Cool. I guess anything else from Pad A that we should, or Pad B that we should mention? By the way, I'm never going to call it Pad West, so if anybody's thinking about correcting me in the chat, save your
Yeah.
keystrokes.
I'm with you. I've said Pad West a couple of times, but it doesn't sound right to me. So I've been using Pad B most of the time again.
Yeah, I said it like 3 times, and then the third time I threw up in my mouth, and I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore. So,
But yeah, I mean, up until the end of the culvert, I think that covers most of the Pad B stuff. Obviously, there's a few other things over by at the end of the tank farm that we haven't touched on yet, but it's coming along, and it's looking so clean, right? Just like we saw right before Flight 5, it's like they had the big mound of dirt, and now, well, let's flatten it out again, and I'm sure we'll have a mound again by the weekend.
yeah, for sure. I mean, because they got to. It's weird that they even took all of it away because they still got to fill in. Still got to fill this back in, right? So like,
well, they haven't taken anything away. They've just been leveling it out over to towards the fluids bunker.
oh, so they just spread it out.
They're just spreading it out and flattening it out. They have not hauled away any of that mound. That's what the one loader that I had said where the tank farm was. You can see where they're digging it up from the pile and driving it over, dumping it and flattening it. It's humorous.
Interesting. Well, I imagine that it'll stay like that, and they may have to bring backfill in for this because, well, at least for part of it, because I'm anticipating that there'll be somewhat of a ramp leading up to this launch tower. I don't think it'll be very tall, but it'll slope up pretty much the entire way there for that driveway. But yeah, well, now I see what you're saying. I can actually see all of the areas where they've done that, and you can even see it over here as well too. It looks like they've spread out into that direction.
Yeah, I think the over there is partially just because the crane matting is all finally gone from the CC8800. That some of that is, but yeah, you can kind of see a little bit of topology where it's just a little different, where they can just spread it out. It doesn't take a whole lot of elevation to spread out that pile when as much space as they actually have to do it in.
For sure. I guess let's move on to the tank farm area. Actually, before we do that, is Grandpa Joe still with us?
Hey, bud, still here.
I'm interested on your thoughts about just Pad B in general, given that you've, I guess, been a little bit removed from most of this stuff for a while. What are your thoughts on what you've seen so far as changes between Pad A and B?
Sadly, I followed Pad A so closely. Looking at this, it's outside of the trench, it's a lot of it's the same. Water deluge, getting the commodities to it, a little expansion there, and it's very familiar. Is my overall feeling in general, but it's an improvement here and there, and they're doing it a lot quicker and a lot better. But it's just a gradual iteration this time, not a revolutionary. Oh my God, what are they doing?
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Let's see. I'm going to move us over to the tank farm, like I was saying.
I do want to add that air separation unit. That would be the best thing by far to add to all this. They really need that.
Yeah, that'll be the limiting factor that allows them to launch bi-weekly. I would have to get with Vix on this, but I don't think they are currently delivering at a, well, obviously it can always increase the rate of deliveries, right? But with increasing the amount of storage capacity that they have, which is basically what's about to happen right here. There are actually 2 more large hot dog tanks that we're still waiting to arrive. So they'll have those plus several vertical tanks over here. So just a ton of cryogenic liquids in this area. And when you're trying to launch every week, I wish I had the numbers in front of me. Actually, you may even still know them off the top of your head, potentially Grandpa Joe. How many offloads are required for a one launch?
Oh, it was somewhere in the order of over 200, I want to say, total truck deliveries.
Yeah, so doing that every week is not impossible. It just creates a lot of traffic. And the difficult part about it is the turnaround time, driving back and forth to Houston, because it's 8 hours. It's an 8-hour turnaround time. That doesn't count your offloading and filling on either end either. So I guess it's probably safe to call it a 12-hour turnaround time, if not 14.
Plus they got to sleep, and there's a limited number of drivers, limited number of trucks, and maintenance. So yeah, it could get backed up real quick. I wanna throw a way back. You remember when there was that oil well at the Sanchez, and we're like, maybe they could get methane out of that, and then they could refine it and pump it out. Or we had so much hope in those days. Or like, who knows?
I personally didn't. I was very strongly against that idea because I knew that there was no way they're getting that kind of propellant supply out of that reservoir. So it would be nice and super convenient if they just happened to build this on top of a natural gas field and they could source everything from right here. But it doesn't quite work like that. And honestly, the most gas well sites they spread, like one well spreads out potentially up to 2 miles long. So doing all of that on one property would be difficult to actually source that amount of gas because, it's a significant amount that they have here. I would love to actually figure out how long you could power like a city of a certain size off of this LNG. That would be interesting.
At least a day or two. But yeah, there aren't they also, I remember I think you covered it. They're building a natural gas facility just on the other side of the channel there. And they have spurs and pipelines of natural gas. I want to say not too far from Starbase. So you've got options there for getting methane by pipe rather than truck. It's just, it would take a lot of regulation and planning.
Yeah. So the one you're talking about is, okay, I got to go further down. Basically this facility right here, which from what we know so far, will at least for now have no association with SpaceX. Obviously, a facility of this size is not necessarily producing, but storing far more volume of methane than they will ever need for SpaceX. Like, I think if they did become a customer of this place, they would probably only be using like 1% of the supply that these guys are pushing through here. But yeah, they're currently dredging this channel here so that they can get large ships through here, because this will basically be a distribution center for filling tankers and shipping LNG overseas.
By the way, I want to say when you look at this and the scale of this project, and then not a peep from anybody about all the construction and wetlands and all that, and natural gas going through here, but SpaceX does it. Oh my God, it's the end of the world.
Well, that is one thing
Yeah.
that we haven't heard about, but the planning for this probably went back like 10 years at least. So I'm sure they probably went through that phase. It just wasn't necessarily public.
Yeah.
As far as like us actually hearing about it, but I'm sure they probably went through that phase.
Oh yeah, because Save RGV, who's up against SpaceX, has been a long opponent of this project as well.
Yeah, there's no way they're not. I mean, it's massive. An incredible volume of gas, of natural gas moving through this place. I don't even know if they've started because there should be a pipeline coming here, right? I don't know if it's where they're at with that. I haven't seen it yet, but
Yeah, I've seen some pipelines to that longer road to the left, right along there, along the parallel to 48 or whatever it is. There's been some fairly sizable ones parallel.
on the other side of the road.
No, it was within there, so it's probably not necessarily the main supplies, but
Oh, there's a huge pipe right
yeah,
here.
yeah, I think that's the one I was talking about right there.
Okay.
And it looks like it's teeing towards the highway. Oh, you can actually see where it goes underneath the causeway off the picture to the left. I think it goes underneath and comes
Right
out
here.
right. Yeah, right there.
Yeah. Surprised it's only one. I'm surprised they don't have a larger one. I mean, I guess that is probably much larger than it looks from this angle, but yeah. I guess you don't need a massive one if you're bringing in gas and liquefying it. So, but yeah, the flow rate through that thing is going to be ridiculous. Cool. I guess I'll move us back over to the launch site. Were we answering questions right now? Or no, this was just off of something Grandpa Joe said, right? Cool. So I guess moving us back over to this side of the tank farm area. Obviously, a lot of this is being cleaned up right now in preparation for the next launch. But over the last week, they have gotten a good amount done as far as like the little foundations that we were speculating on last week. So I think it was Alex who mentioned that the rectangular pad here, which looks like a Lego, would end up being for those vertical tanks, which are currently at the port. These two tanks. So I think it's pretty safe to say now we know where these two tanks are going. It's pretty well spelled out for us that these will go right here, which makes them vertical nitrogen storage tanks, I'm pretty sure. Well, not necessarily. They could be vertical nitrogen storage tanks specifically for these heat exchangers. If we look at the tank farm over here, these heat exchangers pull their nitrogen out of these four tanks. So these are the four nitrogen tanks, and then there's the LOX tanks over here. So they get all of their nitrogen for those subcoolers from these tanks, but I think they'll also have vertical nitrogen tanks here. So that could be what they are, or also could be temporary storage tanks for methane. We're a little bit unsure about which commodities are going to go through here, and also unsure about how it's going to be used, because there's I would say two main options right now. So these could be related to detank operations from Pad B. So as they're recycling methane back to the tank farm, potentially even LOX as well too, they may want to recool it instead of sending back warm, air quote, warm liquid oxygen back to these tanks. And also the other possibility is that these could be part of like a recirculation system for these tanks. So instead of I guess my speculation, and this comes from something that Elon said, in a tweet recently, which was, I think he mentioned the liquid oxygen to methane ratio is like 80% liquid oxygen, like 80 and 20 as far as in the booster, which is interesting because the size of the ratio of the tanks hasn't necessarily changed. So in order to change the ratio as much as they have, I would imagine they have to further densify the liquid oxygen past what they already are currently doing in order to allow them to get a larger volume of it, or not a larger volume, but a larger mass of liquid oxygen into the booster. So with that said, they may potentially be pre-chilling, planning to pre-chill the liquid oxygen. So once they get it into the tanks, they would recirculate it through these heat exchangers and basically maintain a low temperature within these tanks. That would possibly, I think, potentially reduce the propellant loading time. Because if they're storing it at the temperature it's needed, then they don't have to go through the subcooling process, and they can just quickly pump it into the vehicle like extremely fast. So yeah, I think that may possibly be what's going on here. But detanking is the other option. So do you have any thoughts on that, BJ?
Yeah, I mean, I think initially I was kind of on the detanking thoughts on there. I think that thought of using it to continually store the propellants at a lower temperature is intriguing. I think even Alex might have at one point even gone so far to think that perhaps they wouldn't even need subcooling on the pump end side of things, that they could just just store it at operational temperature to potentially save on that whole process. So we'll have to wait and see if what side of that is more true.
Yeah, I mean, because if you're doing that, then not only are you you have the possibility of fitting even more of it into the booster, but you also can fit more into the tank farm itself. So if you can increase the amount that you're able to store in these tanks by, like, I don't know, somewhere between 10 to 20% or something like that, that's quite an achievement. Then you can you have potentially I don't know, at least a full 2 launches in here, if not 3, being able to store that much inside of these. So yeah, I think that would be pretty valuable. And in my opinion, the tank farm for Falcon 9 is actually slightly more advanced as far as some of the things that they were doing there, because I think their pre-chill system is they use nitrogen in a vacuum, essentially. So they're dropping the temperature of it even further than what's currently being done here. I'm pretty positive that they load liquid oxygen even colder on Falcon 9 than they do on Starship. But I could be wrong about that. I think it was in Eric Berger's book where he talked about that. Hopefully I'm not misquoting.
I can't prove it. I can't say it. I'd love to read it. I haven't read that book yet, but yeah, I have no way to confirm or deny what you're saying. But it makes a lot of sense.
Actually, I take that back. That was from an interview that Ellie in Space did with an ex-SpaceX engineer. So I would, I'm probably gonna need to go back and rewatch that but yeah, he mentioned using nitrogen, basically dropping the pressure of the nitrogen in order to achieve colder temperatures with the liquid oxygen. Yeah, crazy stuff.
In general, that's pretty much how refrigeration works. You lower the pressure of a gas, like it can be ammonia, any of the RF refrigerant fluids, and yeah, it'll just depressurize, remove heat, and then you cool it out through a radiator and pump it back in. That's how our AC in our house works.
Yep. Let's see. Elsewhere at the tank farm, they've completed the little demolition work of this wall that was here. So it's basically the same as this one, and it expanded all the way down to this area. So kind of curious why they did that. Not really sure, but I'm guessing we'll probably find out soon.
Yeah, the way that they're clearing even the pad underneath where they're working there definitely suggests that they've got some new hardware planned for that little area.
Yeah, it's really funny just the way that, as we said earlier in the show, nothing is permanent. They'll build walls, take them down, pour concrete, demolish it. Every structure is on the chopping block at all times, it appears. Moving down here, not much really to talk about other than we can now see the pedestals have been fully attached. I'm guessing they were welded to embeds, given that they had umbrellas over them the other last week, and they appear to be doing some welding work with those. If you have OCD, you probably never want to look at this area because it looks crazy, in my opinion. I'm like, if I took some measuring tools down there, there's no way. Like, you can just see it from space. The alignment on these is crazy.
Yeah, as long as the embeds are underneath those big beams under those tanks, it probably doesn't matter.
Yeah, true. So hurry up and get these covered with get this tank mounted soon, so don't have to look at it anymore.
And then they'll put the tanks not quite parallel like some of those other LOX tanks, and really give the OCD people an issue.
Right. Yeah. I think these tanks, if they're the two that are at Sanchez, these will probably be installed immediately after this launch. I think we'll see the crane that is currently laid down by Pad B, that it'll raise back up and move over here immediately. We'll probably see them start laying down a whole bunch of dirt over here so that they can roll it over to this location. So that'll be the first sign that that's going to happen. But yeah, I think we'll probably see that happen pretty quickly, and then it'll actually clear up some space at the Sanchez site, which they could probably need right now. And again, I guess I'll just go ahead and show those so that people know, or that we're all on the same page. We're talking about these two tanks right here, which have been here forever. I think they probably want to get those installed soon. Because there's literally no space at Sanchez anymore. It's crazy.
Yeah, the fact that they actually were using that back portion of Massey's for those couple of vaporizers and stuff last week, and it's like, yep, they have nowhere closer to store any of that stuff.
Yep. Are those still there?
Yeah, they're all still back there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else at the tank farm to mention.
I think that covered all the changes since last week.
And now we're going to move over to Pad A, which obviously we mentioned at the beginning of the show that the FTS for Booster 13 was installed last night. So we do know for sure that has FTS. We don't know whether or not the ship does, but some folks are suggesting that it's already been installed. I don't understand how or where that would have been done. But I personally think that we'll see them do this tanking test and then destack the ship. So one way or another, whether the FTS is installed or not, I'm pretty positive they'll still have to destack it, because even if the FTS is in there right now, they probably haven't pulled the pins. I'm pretty sure. Do you know, BJ, is that like part of the operation to like actually there's some pins you got to pull?
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those. I guess I haven't followed early enough in how the actual, like, if there's an actual physical lockout on it once installed. I mean, from what I've watched them put in, it just looks like the box goes in, it gets plugged in, and that's it. I mean, there's tons of procedures, so there probably is some form of physical lockout. But I don't know. Personally, I don't think it's installed. I feel like if it was already installed and they knew they were going to do the testing, that the ship transport stand would have not stayed so long. I feel like they were going to install it at the same time last night, but then with the weather potentially being the main factor for the shift from Monday to Tuesday, they decided they can wait till after the testing to do it. That's just my rough opinion.
Yeah, I think another big indicator is the fact that the booster transport stand has moved over to the crane yard area, or the old crane yard area, and the ship transport stand is over by Pad B right now. So that alone is a big hint that we're probably going to see a destack of the ship after this cryo test, or this tanking test is completed. So yeah, I don't know. I'm still thinking that we'll see we'll see a destack Sunday after that test.
So Zach,
I was
two
just
things.
gonna say the same thing, that, yeah, the ship stand being so close, that's why I think it hasn't been done yet.
Yeah, and
So if there was a pin, like a physical interconnect, I mean, they could just tie a string to it and pull it down off the ship, and there you go, job's done.
yeah, I mean, it's eventually this is something that Ryan Hansen Space was kind of talking about yesterday. Eventually, something is going to have to change with FTS. They'll probably end up needing to start doing that at the in the Mega Bay in order to like speed up operations. So, when they reach the one flight per week level, they're not going to be able to maintain that if they're taking the time to destack and install that every single time after a tanking test. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this evolves.
Speaking of how all this evolves, I just want to take a moment looking at this angle. You remember all the years we looked at this pad and it was just dirt everywhere. This looks so clean and just done. Like, I really appreciate how much this has all gotten professionally cleaned up and done proper. It's a real change from the heyday.
Yeah, it's night and day difference for sure, and I think Pad B is gonna look even more awesome than this does right now. I mean, I'll be sad when they get rid of this deluge system because I think it's actually really cool. But I'm excited. I'm almost more excited for this pad than I am for Pad B because the work that it's going to take to do all the retrofit stuff here is going to be pretty insane. And taking down the launch mount is going to be interesting to watch as well too. So
Double crane lift again.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how they disassemble that. I mean, they'll pretty much have to strip it before they do it because it's going to be so heavy. I mean, it would be cool to just cut it off and lift the whole thing down, and then scrap it somewhere else or save it. It'd be cool to just like keep it for some reason as like a relic. But yeah, that would be pretty awesome if they, even strip it out and I don't know, make it like a museum or something. Remove all the ITAR stuff and then let us walk through it. Put it in the Rocket Garden and allow visitor access or something.
Hey, who knows? Maybe it ends up in a scrapyard and a piece of it ends up sitting on your desk.
Yeah, this is some thick gauge steel here. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I think probably sometime next year is when they'll start on that. So, yeah, it's gonna be a crazy 2025. That's for sure. I think we're super far past our normal ending spot. We're at like 3 hours right now. So while I do feel like we could probably keep going for a little bit longer, I think that we should probably take some final questions. And I know we've had a ton of donations or several donations come through in the last few minutes. Before I hand it over to Astro Joe for those, do us a favor and hit that like button if you haven't already. I'm showing we only have 43 likes, but I'm sure mine hasn't updated in a while. So if you guys enjoyed today's show and appreciate the extra hour, do us a favor, like I said, and hit that like button. And also Want to thank everybody, even before he reads these off, for all the donations today, because really, really helps, especially with weeks like this, where Mauricio is probably going to end up doing flyovers a lot closer together than what he normally does. And, obviously flying at different angles, doing low altitude, and also, spending the time and gas that it requires to get up to high altitude to then get us these more overhead shots is certainly more expensive than it has been in the past. And also with him using the smaller plane that he's been using, it also takes longer to get up to altitude. So he ends up basically being in the air for, I think, like close to 2 hours. So yeah, lots of fuel costs related to that. So appreciate all the donations and everybody who is a member of the channel, and also Patreon members as well too. So with that, I will go ahead and pass it over to Astro Joe.
Yeah, excellent. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks, Zach. I want to thank Paul Stanton for a $20 super chat asking, why are there no lightning towers? It occurred to me the other day. Thanks for all your great work.
Well, as far as I know, we have a lightning tower up here, right?
It is
Right.
a lightning tower.
Yeah, I believe the whole tower is grounded as a lightning tower itself. It's all integrated, right?
Yeah, that was my understanding. I mean, that's a fairly lightweight antenna tower with the weather station on top of it. So I don't know that would do too much on a lightning strike. But I believe it was just the fact that the tower itself is taller than the vehicle. It acts as a lightning tower itself.
By the way, guys, I was super interested to find this out. I know we're running late, but aside. So lightning towers actually take they don't just conduct the electricity from the lightning down to the ground to save everything. They actually take some of the static electricity out of the air and make it less likely to be hit overall. I was like, oh, that was a pretty interesting. I hope that was factually correct, but that's what I heard.
I would love to see this tower get struck by lightning one time.
I know, that'd be awesome.
All right. In an answer to that question, Event Dudes in chat is saying it's currently an anemometer tower of 42 feet, which doubles as lightning. But to your point, I'm not sure I've seen a lightning tower on Tower 2 yet. But at any rate, I want to thank 55 Chevy Guy Steve for a $10 super chat. Will the same type of subcoolers be used to liquefy gas from the separation plant?
Well, we kind of touched on that a little bit. We're not sure. It really depends on whether or not they're going to start pre-chilling so that they don't have to use those kind of subcoolers. I guess one thing that I forgot to mention is that assuming that they're going to use this for detanking, sorry, let me go back to it. Assuming that they're going to use it for detanking, and even if it's a recirculation system, they're probably going to require separate pumps just for that, because you can't you could, but it's not necessarily the greatest idea to just rely on gravity when it comes to detanking, especially if you're going to be re-chilling this, because it needs to, you want to have like a predetermined flow rate that never changes. So they're probably going to have a bunch of pumps that go over to this location, and I think that I've found those actually already at the storage site. They have a bunch of pumps down here, which I believe, if these aren't water pumps, they may possibly be able to be used for that. So yeah, that'll be interesting. Moving on, hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, and on the same note of the air separation plant, I've heard some speculation about the land swap. So Big Luscious asks, now that the land swap has been canceled, does that affect the room needed for the air separation facility? And Phil follows up with, where was the land that they were giving up now that the planned swap is not happening?
Does anybody know the answer to that? I just found out today about that, so.
I don't have the exact locations myself.
Cool. Yeah, I'm sorry we're not able to give a better answer on that one.
Yeah, same here. I don't have any details on that myself. Question from Moody Blues: is the draw works from the second oil rig? I don't believe so. It looked new to me, right?
It's not from the second oil rig, but it's also not new. The one from, 'cause I think the one for Pad A came from Deimos, and then the other one came from Phobos, and so that one is at the KSC Pad 39A tower, and it's still there. So this one was purchased after that. So whether it came off of another oil rig, I'm sure it probably did because it's used, but we just don't know exactly where it came from. Same model though.
All right, excellent. Last question I have in my queue from Crane Man: why did they bring in so many safety nets for Tower B and use so little of them?
Well, the goal for safety nets is to not need them, but that is a good question. I think actually what you mean is that they had extra safety nets that they made and then they never installed them. I don't know. There's a chance they could come back, but yeah, I'm not sure.
All
Wait,
right.
are they still down here?
Yeah, it's the two that were just they were recently removed.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Well, that is all I have. And so since we have Grandpa Joe here, I'm going to let him do the final sign off. And I will say for now, see y'all next week. Thanks for an awesome chat. Zach, DJ, Todd, Grandpa Joe, it's been a pleasure sharing the stream with you.
Yeah, and I will sign off as well too. I will not be on the show next week, but I will probably at least be on the Lab Padre live stream for the launch. So if y'all are planning on watching one of the launch coverage, other than SpaceX, obviously, which I'm sure we'll be showing that as well too on that stream. Yeah, if you guys are going to be watching that, then I'll see y'all over there. Not literally, but you know what I mean. And until then, I'll see you all 2 weeks from now. And thanks for another great show, everybody. And I'll pass it off to BJ.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us for another extended episode. Lots of great conversations, insight from Grandpa Joe and Zach and everybody else here. So looking forward to seeing a launch here this week, and I'm sure everyone else is too. So I'll send it over to Todd.
Yep, same thing here. Thank you guys all for coming, and thank you for watching. We appreciate the likes and all that YouTube stuff. Just want to remind people, though, if you did get gifted a membership, make sure you connect your Discord so you can come to the show and tells where we get to look at these the day before, sometimes a couple days before, and go over everything. Everybody gets their opinion. Everybody gets to talk. So that's always a lot of fun. I appreciate everything. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
Well, guys, it's another one for the books. Thank y'all so much for having me back and inviting me. It's been a real blast. And, to everybody out there, I love you. Bye.
Whoa, you got to do the full sign off.
Yeah, you do.
Oh, no. All right. Most main engine cut off. Most engines cut off now. Love you. Bye.
Oh, man. All right, we'll see y'all.